Tour guides of Reddit. What is the dumbest question someone asked during a tour? Tourists in Dutch windmills always ask where the engine is. They don't believe the wind can rotate the blades for some reason. This gets asked way too often. Once had a woman insist that she needed to spray herself with my bear spray because I could not make her understand that it does not work the same as insect repellent. She decided against taking the tour and called to yell at my boss over my refusal to spray her with bear spray. Not me, but my mom worked as a concierge in a mountainous town with a lot of wildlife, and more than a couple people have asked her if they put the animals into the mountains at night. A friend of mine is a park ranger and he'll get phone calls from people along the lines of "a deer is in my backyard." His response is something like, "It's a wild animal. It's allowed to be there." People then demand that he comes out to remove the animal, and 10 out of 10 times by the time anyone shows up the animal has moved on. I once worked as a tour guide in Edinburgh. At 1 PM every day the 1 o'clock gun is fired from Edinburgh Castle. I have been asked more times than I can count, "What time does the 1 o'clock gun go off?" I also loved being asked when Scottish people celebrate New Year's Eve. I thought she was joking, so I said the 25th of July. She wasn't joking. My girlfriend worked at the Sherlock Holmes Museum in London, at 221B Baker Street, and apparently a surprising number of fully grown adults are under the impression that Sherlock Holmes is an actual living person who really lives there. The worst part was that they weren't allowed to disabuse the guests of their misconceptions, so when the guests would ask "Where is Sherlock Holmes?" she'd have to say something like, "Oh, he's just out on a case at the moment." Seriously weird tbh. I'm very happy that the museum entertains these people. I can imagine the arguments these people get into about the reality of Sherlock Holmes when they get back home. I work at a zoo and I was giving a tour which my 4-year-old cousin was on, and I was holding a snake for everyone to see. Afterward, when I was giving everyone hand sanitizer, he asked me how to make snakes. A different time a woman asked me if the animals were animatronic and I laughed. Then she said, "I'm serious." In my head I was like, "B, does that moving elephant really look animatronic to you?" But I couldn't say that, so I just said no. I have an endless amount of the stories. Some pretty strange people come to the zoo, I guess. I've heard a grown man tell a child that they were looking at a lion while pointing at a green iguana, and a grown woman who asked, "At what age do penguins become killer whales?" So I know your pain. I was a park ranger working at the information desk. A woman approached me to get a map. While we were talking, a bell started ringing. She asked about the bell and I told her it was in the clock tower and that it rang out a time every hour on the hour. She asked how many times it would toll, so I looked at my watch and said 12. She then said, "12? Why 12? What's the significance?" I said, "It's noon. It's high noon." I'll post for my Scotland tour guide. So a few tours before my group was another group of Americans. This one bunch was quite observant and we're having a great time, looking at farmland and such. This one lady spots a sheep with a dyed spot of wool, and with all seriousness, she asks, "Is that the way to tell what color wool the sheep will grow into?" Bless the tour lady for her response. Yes, keep an eye out for the tartan sheep. They are lovely this time of year. Used to give tours of a historic wooden grain elevator and farm buildings from the early 1900s. Had a guest ask, "Isn't it amazing how much healthier everyone was back then, before we had all these chemicals?" At the time, we were standing next to a machine that was used to coat grain with formaldehyde to make it last longer. Oh god, I miss the good old days when everyone died of polio, worker safety and child labor laws were non-existent, asbestos, lead, and arsenic were in literally everything, and grain elevators were consistent fire traps that occasionally exploded and blew everyone inside to kingdom come. Yes, we all lived so much longer back then. I was a tour bus driver up in Juneau, Alaska. I did exclusively cruise ship passengers and most of them were older and chose to go on a cruise ship because everything is taken care of for them and they don't need to think, so naturally I got a bunch. The most common ones were, "Do you guys take American money? What elevation are we at?" This was immediately after they got off their ship. Or, "Why is the glacier so dirty?" The worst one I ever heard though was, "What does clear weather have to do with flying safely?" This was after a woman unloaded on me because her helicopter tour got cancelled because of fog and was looking for someone to yell at. I didn't even work for that company. I have so many. to date, the stupidest thing was when someone brought a live turtle they found in one of our botanical gardens to the front door of the European Art Gallery and asked where they should put it. Like, I dunno, maybe back where you found it? LOL. Poor turtle. Not a tour guide, but my mom told me about a tour she had gone on in Central South America. I don't remember exactly where. They were touring some ancient sites. The tour guide said that the people who used to live there had come from distances as far away as modern day Utah. One woman asked, "Oh, were they Mormon?" The tour guide was apparently flabbergasted and eventually went up. Number. Ask the Mormons. Who knows what they'll say. Not a tour guide, but once went on a trip to Swaziland, now known as Eswatini, with the dumbest adult woman I've ever met. It was a mission trip, so we were there to work, but she just kept asking about shopping, refusing to touch dirty things or try cultural experiences. We get to the sightseeing safari, no killing of animals, and we get about halfway through our ride when she taps the tour guide, TG, on the shoulder and asks, "So when are we going to see the tigers?" TG. Tigers? Lady. Yeah, tigers. IDK, what you people call it. Like a lion but with stripes? TG. No tigers in Africa. Lady. Yes there are. I promised my kids I'd see tigers and bring back a picture of me petting one. TG. No tigers in Africa. Please do not pet the lions. She spent the rest of the trip bitching about not being able to see tigers on the wrong freaking continent. ETA. Formatting. No tigers in Africa. Till, honestly, bring back a picture of me petting one. Please arrange an opportunity for her to try that, on a non-sedated tiger, of course. Not a tour guide, but I was in a tour one time, part of a school trip to the Pickering nuclear power plant. Before we went there were girls in our class who absolutely refused to believe that the point of a nuclear reactor was to boil water. That's stupid. You can plug a kettle in to boil water. That doesn't make electricity. After the whole tour of the steam generator, turbines, and generator room, the tour guide asked any questions and one of the girls asked, "So how does that make electricity?" And it was literally like that scene from Zoolander, but why male models, seriously? I just explained it all. It's funny how boiling water in a kettle is actually a real good description of how nuclear power work. We got lots of elderly travel groups through our site in the fall, the kind offered by companies who take old people around in big charter buses. But surprisingly, the elder groups were the absolute worst behaved of all the visitors we got. Worse than elementary age school groups and way worse than general visitors, because when they get into large packs, they become very entitled and think that rules and social norms don't apply to them. I had one old lady ask me very loudly in the middle of a large tour, "When are they going to feed us?" She didn't raise her hand or politely get my attention. She just shouted it when I was in mid-sentence. I replied, "I'm not sure when you're scheduled to eat, but your group leader could probably help you with that." Translation: how the frick am I supposed to know? I don't work for the tour company in any capacity. And why would you interrupt me in the middle of my tour to ask me that? It was really irritating because when you're giving a tour you have a narrative planned in your head, and then when something like that happens it completely throws off your rhythm. I was experienced enough at the time that it was more annoying than anything. I'm sure she thought that we coordinated with the company in some way and that was why she asked. Had she come up to me and asked when I wasn't doing a formal talk to a group of 100 plus people, it wouldn't have bothered me. I work at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, giving tours, playing Sam Adams and John Hancock, etc. Immediately following the tour, which wraps up with a movie about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, a guest turned to me and asked, "So who won?" Great question. So the regulars suffered more casualties, but were ultimately successful in finding the no, I mean the war. America. She was from the Midwest. She knew. She just wanted to hear you say it. My mom used to be a tour guide in Greece and was once asked while showing her group some ruins why did it never rain in ancient Greece. Being unable to understand what the tourist meant, she asked him to elaborate. He responded, "Well, none of the buildings have ceilings, so clearly it never rained," and I was just wondering how that's possible. This guy thought that ancient Greece had no rain. He didn't understand that the roofs had simply collapsed after 2000 plus years. Sigh. As a bonus, not really stupid as much as very poorly informed. Once while at the Acropolis with a group, A tourist asked if she would be taking them to the pyramids next. While guiding a zipline tour in Hawaii. So is this island surrounded by water on 3 sides or 4? I've been a tour guide for 4 years now, split between 2 countries. Probably got some other good ones if people are interested. We're interested. Outside Stockholm there's a place called Birka that now is an outdoors museum, since it was an important Viking Age trading center between ca 750 AD and 975 AD. Of course not much is left. It's a museum and an archaeological site. Still, American tourists come and are really disappointed with the boring UNESCO World Heritage Site and ask, well, this is all very nice, but can we go to the Viking town now, as if there's still living Vikings hanging around in their own reservation somehow. I've asked a tour guide this question during a rafting trip and she said 2 often come up. 1. Does the river go in a circle? 2. When does low high tide start? Typically from people who live near the ocean. Till rivers don't have tides. I live by the ocean. Post on behalf of a tour guide from USA. Husband and I were on a cruise in Alaska and there are literally 30 tours per port to choose from. We chose a tour that included an all-you-can-eat crab fest. We all get on the bus and tour guide, okay, before we get going, is anyone here allergic to crab shellfish? Meet a husband. Who the frick would be stupid enough to go on a 5 people raise their hand. Accommodating significant others of seafood enthusiasts. Not dummies, maybe just nice partners. 1. If my dad's co-workers worked a ticket booth thing in Yellowstone for a summer. When and where do you release the bears and at what elevation do deer turn into elk? And the 2 questions I remember. Overheard whilst walking round Colosseum. American tourist. So you are telling me all this was made before America? I do not believe you. History started on the 4th of July, 1776. Everything before that was a mistake. Ron Swanson. I have to. I worked at a colonial American historic house museum and gave tours in addition to working in collections. 1. I was giving a tour to a rather large group of people on a smoldering July weekend. Of course the home was refit with air conditioning, but even then it was still pretty steamy in there. 1 person, a man probably around 40 or so, asked me, so is the air conditioning authentic to when the house was built? 2. We had a little miniature copy of the Declaration of Independence, which I would pick up and reference at a certain point in the tour. 1 kid, probably around 20 and from England or Ireland, raised his hand and asked, so is that the original Declaration of Independence? I responded, no, I'm afraid not. No one knows where it is, since Nicolas Cage nabbed it back in 2002. That's the best answer I heard about Declaration of Independence. Go to love National Treasure movie. Not a tour guide, but I was on a tour of Europe with my first wife and her mother. I believe we were in France and Mill was P that stores wouldn't take her dollars. Few places, large department stores, would do a dollar exchange at the cash register, meaning that if she was buying a €30 something and the exchange rate was €30 equals $50, trying to make the math easy, they would take her $100 bill, convert it on the spot to the equivalent in euros, in this case €60, give her the purse, and then the change of €30. She was thought she was going to be ripped off, and wanted to call the police, the US consulate and US 911. I crap you not. She wanted to pay in US dollars and get change in US dollars. The best part of the story, in the US she worked in retails in a department store, Macy's. So I ask her, when French people come into your store, would you take their euros? Her reply, why should I? That's America. We are American. We use dollars. Why can't they learn to use dollars just like they learned our language? She was dead serious. Yes, she was not that bright. Proton Beam Cancer Treatment Institute. Me. The protons originate from a hydrogen gas. 1 drop of water contains enough hydrogen to do X amount of treatment sessions. Guessed, why don't you use water to treat the cancer then? We do. I used to be a tour guide at a mansion built 1878 in Salem, Oregon. Tourists often asked about witches and witch trials, and we had to let them know that not only did that happen a lot earlier, it also happened in Salem, Massachusetts. I can't tell you how old I was before I realized this. Not a tour guide, bit on a swamp tour outside of New Orleans. The guide was talking about nutria and had a pelty passed around the boat. I went to hand it to the teenage girl next to me and she asked if I brought it with me. When I was 12 I took a field trip with my brother to some caves. I asked the tour guide what would happen if you tried to melt a stalactite. She looked incredibly shocked. I mean, rock melts, so it would melt. Not a tour guide, but I was once on a tour of Fort Sumter, start of the US Civil War, in South Carolina. The fort is a small island, and on one side of the island there were a number of flags, maybe 8 or 9. A woman on the tour asked how they got all the flags to fly the same direction. Nobody knew how to respond. Stupidest question I ever heard was when I was on a tour, not giving one. It was a tour of a uni, and some kid's mother asked who would be doing her son's laundry in the dorms. When the guide said he would do his own, her next question was, couldn't one of the girls do it for him? Not a tour guide, and I don't know if it counts as a stupid question, but once when I was in an aquarium and they were doing a scheduled feeding with a talker, lady asked the guide if she could be quiet as she was trying to enjoy the fishes. The guide was baffled and walked to the other side of the tank to continue her talk. At the top of Sears Tower in Chicago, I was impressed with the view and exclaimed, I bet you could see the whales migrating from here. A long pause, then a dry response, there are no whales in Lake Michigan. I'm from the West Coast. You can see a long distance, but not quite that far. Not a tour guide, but while we were on our honeymoon in Alaska we went to Denali National Park and did the bus tour on the one road that goes through the park. In front of us sat 2 older women. Well, practically the whole bus was older people, who were loudly complaining that they weren't seeing any animals, as if Denali, which is over 6 million acres, is a zoo. I had an experience with a woman who insisted that you could pet the small sharks. Note that small is 2ft 5ft long. They were lemon sharks and had sharp teeth. When I told her that you couldn't, she started making a scene and stomping on the ground. We had to call security to escort her out. Not only did she resist, but the slapped me in the face as I was making the call. And get this, she had a kid. He was very ashamed of her and was crying hysterically. He must have been 8-9 years old. All cause she couldn't pet apex predators. Worst aquarium day ever. Adults throwing temper tantrums like toddlers when they don't get their way is literally the most cringy thing ever. Former New Orleans tour guide. While does Mardi Gras always fall on a Tuesday is a common one, I have special love in my heart for a particularly chaotic night in the French Quarter. You see, I was scheduled to give a walking tour, except that night manhole covers in one part of the quarter decided to spontaneously fly up into the air. It seemed to be localized to one part of the quarter, though, so I gave my tour group the choice. Either we cancel the tour with money back and so on, or we do the tour but avoid that part of the quarter and be aware we might need to change plans at any time should the danger get worse. The group decided to risk it. As we set our ground rules for this new scenario, one of my tourists raised their hand and asked what should we do if one of the manhole covers hits us, to which I paused for a moment to thank my patron deity, the god of comedy, set up lines, and replied, well, the typical response is to fall to the ground while screaming out in pain, but feel free to do whatever comes naturally. Newer tour guide at MT Rushmore was once asked if they take down MT Rushmore and pack it inside Rushmore Cave during the winter. I have worked at tourist attractions near the Great Smoky Mountains. People have totally asked when the smoke machines are turned on. Not a tour, but worked at Fish and Chips place on Seattle waterfront swarming with tourists. Him, how many pieces of fish in the 3-piece fish and chips? Me, since it's Tuesday, we do 3. Feels elbow bump from manager. It could be 1 fish and 2 chips. Tour guide for a university. One kid, 3rd grade maybe, asked what happens if someone gets decapitated. I'm sorry, gets what? Like what happens if someone's head gets cut off? This was many months ago and I still don't quite know how to answer. If he's important we put the head in a jar like Richard Nixon. If not we sell the head to cheesemakers. I was working at a major tourist attraction in Canada. There were guides to the attraction in maybe 15 different languages that were free to take, all organized in a display. The guides in English were marked English. The guides in other languages were all marked with the word for the language in that language and graphics of 1 or 2 flags from where that language is most commonly spoken. For example, Espanol and the Spanish and Mexican flags. An American tourist walks up and demands to know where the guides are in American. I used to work with a girl who asked me if it was hard when I lived in England because I don't speak the language. After I explained that we all speak English, she said, "Well, I don't know. I thought they spoke French." Not a tour guide, but I used to work on Mount Rainier National Park in Paradise Inn. If you know anything about Mount Rainier, you know that the weather on the mountain is very unpredictable. Mount Rainier literally makes its own weather. We could go days without actually seeing the mountain. Tourists would frequently ask us where the mountain actually was, but my favorite was the tourist who asked, "When are you going to move the clouds so I can see the mountain?" as if we control the weather. At Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, there are large slabs of rock cut out from the mountains around the property. Some of these slabs have dinosaur footprints. On the tour, 2 elderly ladies were discussing how dangerous and scary to have dinosaurs in their backyard roaming around. I mean, that might just be a hypothetical. Not a guide, but I work in a busy tourist attraction in Niagara Falls. It's really common to be asked what time they turn the falls off at, and if they shut them off during the winter. I've been asked if they dye the watercolors at night. Lights are shone on them. I've also been asked, "So what country are we in?" Again, it was an American who asked. LOL. If I'm going to be honest, tourists can be some of the most entitled and ignorant people I've come across. I have some great stories about some of those jerks. Tour guest here was at an aquarium and a guy was giving a talk about penguins and had a penguin sitting beside him who appeared heck bent on pecking him in the eyes. Like the whole time, this thing was going ape. It's about hip high in height and he's squatting down trying to talk and constantly dodging stabbing attempts. Part of the talk was specifically about how they can be really feisty and hurt you, as the penguin on display proved so. He learned us about penguins and got to the "any questions" part, and several moms wanted to know when their stroller-aged kids would be able to pet the vicious penguin. The guy's face. I was ashamed to be in the same room as those dolts. They started inching nearer with their kids. Kids are grabbing for the penguin. The guy gets really short with them for putting their kids in danger. And still these B walk away from it all in disbelief that the worker man got snippy with them. So frustrating. Before we can let your kids to touch the penguin, we need to see if he likes you. Please line up in a nice row with your children in their strollers at a safe distance. I'll call you forward one by one. You can even make it a game to see how many people need to be consecutively get their face pecked apart before the first person in queue realizes that this is a bad idea. Not a guide, but on a tour of Berlin concerning Third Reich. American tourists, what side of the Berlin Wall did Hitler live on? Freaking incredible. Under it would have been my reply. People who work in customer service, what is the one thing you never thought you'd have to explain to an adult? Years ago I worked in student housing at a university and had to explain to her father, for well over an hour, that I could not make sure that his daughter was in her room by 8 PM and ensure that she never spoke to boys. A dialogue I actually had to have with a grown but adult, him, pointing at the price tag on a shirt. "Excuse me, what do these numbers represent?" Me, "The numbers right after the dollar sign." Him, "Yes." Me, "That's the price of the shirt." Him, "Oh, I see. Thank you." At least he was friendly. Alien. That if you order ice cream for 4 people on a hot summer day, but the 4 people are still like 30 minutes away, said ice cream is going to melt before the 4 people get there. And no, that is not my fault. You are not more important than any other customer, which is why we sold whatever you're looking for to people who came in here before you. People really show how narcissistic they are. They are offended by the world not revolving around them. You genuinely get people who can't believe a store didn't refuse to sell items to other people, on the off chance that the main character comes in and wants one. Also, it's sold out because you waited until 2 days before a holiday and other people came in a week ago. You need to take the suppositories out of their foil packaging before you use them. He complained that they didn't work and were uncomfortable. I bet they were. I used to be a pharmacy tech. When translating the directions from the doctor to what is on the label, the pharmacist once told me to assume that the person is an idiot. That I needed to type in unwrap and insert into the correct orifice. Unwrap and insert anally or vaginally, even though the sig that the doc wrote is insert one. That we sell stuff for a higher price than we buy it in for. They were genuinely angry that we didn't buy their crap for the same price we sold it at. You only pay XXX amount wholesale, then we resell it for profit. That's what business does. Feel free to open your own store. Oh, so many things. 1. If you wish to return an item, you must present the item and your receipt. I cannot process a refund if you have neither. 2. No, we do not sell asbestos. No, I cannot order summon for you. 3. When water boils, it does indeed produce bubbles. If the water is bubbling once it reaches temperature, your kettle is in fact working properly. 4. Zip ties are not simply disposable handcuffs. They can be used for other purposes, and it should not be concerning nor surprising that a hardware store sells them. My first job at 16 was Party City. One day, I'm blowing up balloons at the balloon counter and a lady comes up to buy some latex balloons. I ask if she wants us to fill them and she said no, she'd do it at home. Making small talk, I said, oh, you must have one of the party time helium tasks at home. No, I blow them up with my mouth. You just put the string on them and they float. I do the multiple blinks, trying to work out in my head what she's just said. She fully believed she could blow up the balloons with her mouth and the magic was attaching a string. I tried to give this woman an impromptu chemistry lesson. She insisted. I still think about that magic woman to this day. Here are a few favorites as a bartender. A drink is liquid. Bad idea to shake it around. Yes. The no smoking sign also applies to people who are addicted. Yes. The people on the tables around you are drunk. And no, I'm not going to kick them out. Seriously, what were they expecting when entering a bar at 2 AM? You still have to pay the entire meal, even though you only ate half of it. Especially because they asked us to pack other half for them to take home. No, you're not allowed to test our liquor by taking a shot unless you buy a shot. The kitchen door as well as the backroom door are closed for a reason, and that reason is not to hide the good stuff at it. I was informed by my cook that he is, in fact, the good stuff. Exposure doesn't pay my freaking bills. Your kid is not going to get alcohol from me. Most of the time I can kinda understand the question, as legal drinking age when accompanied by your parents is only 14 for light beverages here in Austria, but that kid looked like it still went to primary school. And I don't care that it's his birthday. No, we're not running an illegal smuggling business in the back. You just watch too many movies. Also, did you really believe that I'd tell you if it were the case? No, you can't pay and insert weird cryptocurrency here. I've had that twice. After explaining to them that we don't take CC. I don't know your regular. You've been here twice. And one of those times I wasn't even working. Take my award for your cook. That gave me a good laugh. That owning a Fitbit does not make you skinny, and today I had to explain to a couple that just because the Amazon Echo box doesn't state that it uses Wi-Fi, it will still use it as it needs it to be a smart home device. I'm betting you the box does say that it requires an active internet connection, but they're too stupid to read it. I understand you want to protect your personal information, but I cannot send you what you want unless you give me your address. I worked at the airport and someone wanted to go through Tsar with a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. I calmly explained that liquids weren't allowed through security. The man gave the most genuine chuckle I've ever heard and said, "Oh, this isn't Coca-Cola, it's gasoline." My co-worker beat me to a reaction cause he very loudly exclaimed, "What the frick?" Maybe he just felt like a strip search that day. A very high society woman came to the store saying her brand new $3,000 Microsoft Surface bought by her husband was defective because she could not get internet when she was on the move. I wondered if she had a version with a 3G/4G SIM card, but quickly realized she was talking about Wi-Fi. I tried explaining to her how Wi-Fi works and that she could not use her own Wi-Fi outside her house but could share her smartphone internet connection. She would have none of it. She said I was lying to her and making fun of her and asked to speak to my manager, who then proceeded to tell her the exact same thing. She left almost screaming. My mum once went on holiday across the country and asked me for the home Wi-Fi password cause the hotel she was in wanted her to pay to use theirs. But I have it at home, she didn't get it and thought I was being so cruel not letting her use it. I used to work at Aaron Brothers. They had the famous buy a frame get another for a penny sale. People would try to return one frame, which obviously isn't allowed because then you're getting one frame for a penny. You have to return both frames. Seeing the blank stare of confusion as I explained that to people was always entertaining. If your payment term is 6 weeks, being on holiday for 2 weeks is not a valid reason for not paying within the payment term. If you want to continue using the service, you need to pay your bill, or why their services were suspended after they filed a chargeback. Feels like I'm talking to a child each time. There was a lot of chatter about people complaining recently that Sony was deleting the new Cyberpunk games off their PlayStation after they demanded and received refunds. Tweets all over about PPL getting mad that they couldn't have a refund and keep the product. I worked at a CVS in high school. Many weirdos shop at CVS, but the weirdest among them were the ones who bought diapers and then asked me if I knew how to put them on a baby. Maybe it's just my personal opinion, but if you're at the point in your life where you have to buy diapers and put them on a baby, you should have figured this out from someone other than the teenager at the cash register. When we had our baby, the hospital took the time to make sure we actually knew how to provide basic care and provided a parenting book that covered all of the basics. Not sure if this is standard or not, but it definitely should be. Part of me wonders if they were just trying to prank you. Worked at a coffee shop. Woman comes in saying that the mug she bought is defective. I ask what is wrong and she goes, "It says it's microwave and dishwasher safe." I put it in the microwave to heat it up and it got hot me. Yeah, it means it can be used in a microwave without breaking. Has a bowl never gotten hot when you've microwaved it? The contents heat up the container as well. Then it's not safe. I actually had a number of plates that were not microwave safe. They wouldn't break or contaminate the food. They'd just get 10 times as hot as the food you put on them. Holding title to something, e.g., vehicle, house, business license, in your name means that it is yours. There is no such thing as "that's not really my car, it's my son's car, it's just in my name." Or the opposite of this. Investment account is in the wife's name. Husband calls and wants to talk about it, but it's my money. It's only in her name because she doesn't pay tax. Client bought a car from our dealership and called 2 days later to say that the back doors were not opening from the inside. Asked him specifically if the child lock is deactivated, to which he replied yes it is. Brought the vehicle back to us. One of our salespeople opens the door and deactivates the child lock while getting in. Opens the door and the client is absolutely mind blown that the door is suddenly opening. Your salespeople are obviously car whisperers. Explaining that having your nasty bus minivan cleaned in a $20, 15 minutes express wash and vacuum service will in fact not magically replace missing paint and remove 2 dozen Jolly Ranchers melted into the carpet. She thought she was getting the GTA special car wash. Things don't have warranty after the warranty period. If you break something you don't have warranty. Warranty works by fixing the product, not giving you back the money or a totally different product. Also, warranties are for defects, not because your klutzy butt dropped it, smashed it, lost it. That's what insurance is for, and yes, there usually is a deductible. The package carrier says they delayed my package due to a hurricane. I paid for overnight shipping. Your company is trash. Me, sir, we didn't delay your package. The carrier is a different company, and there is a literal hurricane over the distribution center. Or, I paid extra for overnight shipping and you haven't shipped it yet. Me, on Monday morning, sir, you ordered Friday at 8 p.m. We close at 3 p.m. We don't work weekends, and neither do the shipping companies. So the soonest you could possibly receive it is Tuesday if we shipped it today. Additionally, you didn't pay extra for overnight shipping because we only offer one shipping method, and it is overnight. That you actually have to pay for things if you break them. I don't mean like a little tear that happened accidentally. I mean this woman cut up a shirt because she couldn't get it off. She pulled scissors out of her bag and cut up the sleeve and down the side. Handed it back to me and walked off. I called after her and said, "Mom, you have to pay for this," and she responded with, "But I don't want it and it's damaged now, so I shouldn't have to pay for it." I then explained to her that as she was the one who damaged it and we can't sell it, that she has to pay, as is store policy and I'm fairly sure is a given in most stores. She just looked at me and said, "Well, can't you just see it back up?" No, that's not how it works, lady. In the end I radioed security and a store manager and she ended up paying for the shirt, which was £160. It was a rather pricey brand, but honestly, who thinks that's an okay thing to do? An entitled B, that's who. That a color copier cannot magically make your black and white image into a color one. I've had to explain this to 2 different customers over the years and know of at least one instance where it happened to a coworker. In tech support, I had to explain to a nurse how to make a capital letter for her password. How do you get a nursing degree without ever making a capital letter on a keyboard? I used to work alone in a dry cleaners. A customer asked why I wasn't at the counter. I replied I was in the restroom. He said, "Why?" I hope you went into great detail about your bodily functions. 1. No, I don't have the ability to find exactly where your package is right now. I don't have any more information on that than you do. 2. No, I am not going to give you an entire purchase coupon because you were nice to me. 3. No, I can't stay on the phone with you while you drive to the store to return your item. If you do not need immediate assistance, I have to move on. 4. No, I can't use a coupon for item A if you are buying item B. 5. No, the item is not in the bag. 6. No, I can't call you if I am responding to your request via email. If you would like to speak to a representative, please call us. 7. No, I cannot give you the item for free simply because there is no tag on it. 8. No, you yelling at me is not teaching me anything, except that you are an butthole. Worked as a server at a higher-end steakhouse that had a beautiful patio. I was working a lunch shift on a day that was completely overcast. Looked like it could start pouring rain any minute, so we didn't open up the patio. The patio always had tables and chairs, but we didn't open any umbrellas or set any tables. A lady came in and asked for a seat on the patio. Weird due to the weather, but whatever. I walked her out to the patio and set up a table for her, and as I was walking away she asked if she could sit in a sunnier spot. None of the umbrellas were open. There were no sunny spots because the sun was not out. I just looked at her and told her she could have her pick of any of the tables. She looked around and it was like it finally dawned on her that it was not patio weather. Years later, and I'm still not sure if she thought I had some magical weather powers or if she thought if she just wanted it to be sunny strongly enough it would be. Maybe she was oblivious to the sky and thought she was in a shaded patio. Some places have a patio on 2 edges. My co-worker and I work at a deli. One day, a customer came up to them asking why their meat smelled weird. My co-worker asked, "Well, how long have you had it?" And then the co-worker said, "A few months." Why? Apparently, the dude never even knew that expiration dates existed. He said that his ex-wife always prepared foods for him. He pointed at various other foods and asked if they had expiration dates too. So my co-worker had to explain that each food had a different lifespan. Was he old? Because boomer men have this issue the minute they have to live alone for whatever reason. My friend's grandpa didn't know how to clean the house or prepare food. The place went to crap. Apparently after his wife divorced him. Can't imagine why. If the closed sign is up, it means we're closed. Why am I still here then? Because I work here. But it says closed. Your work ends when it's closed. Well, that sure is news to me because that's not what my boss told me. Karen. That you have to pay back the money you spend on a credit card. Lady legit thought banks just handed them out. I asked what she did when it stopped working, and she replied, "I usually get another one." Yes, I realize that when you were given your social security number, back before the war, they told you to never tell it to anyone, but you called social security, and that's how you're identified in our system. So you're going to have to tell it to me or I can't help you. Back in the late 90s, I was working retail at a dollar store. One fellow who had one of those faces that made you wonder if he was related to himself came up to me and asked, "I crap you not. Do you have the thing with the thing that comes out?" I gave him a second to see if he would realize what he had said and provide some detail. After a beat or two, I said, I'm sorry, sir. You will have to be a bit more specific. What thing are you looking for? He made hand gestures, almost as if he were pulling open a door or something, and said, you know, one of those things with the thing that comes out. Managing not to lose my temper, I said, sir, what does the thing do? He said, it makes coffee. I said, are you asking if we have coffee makers that have filter baskets that can be pulled completely out? Yes, he said. I replied, no, sir, we don't have the thing with the thing that comes out. We only have the thing with the thing that swivels out. Sorry. Later, he came up to me. He held up a box of 35-gallon trash bags. He asked me, will these fit in that, and he pointed at a trash can that was clearly marked 50 gallons. I said, no, sir. He asked, why not? I said, because that is a 50-gallon trash can, and those are 35-gallon bags. He looked at me blankly for a moment. I added, 35 is less than 50. Ah, he said, nodding sagely. You can't return a TV with a broken screen when it also has a boot print on it. Dude threw a punch at me over the counter after that conversation. That 30-plus-year-old ski boots that you've stored in an Arizona desert attic for 99% of their life do not get warranty coverage when they absolutely shatter in sub-zero temperatures because they've degassed all their plasticizers. Dude, I want to use degassed all their plasticizers in a sentence this week. Mind blown. Yes, the stairs indeed go up and down. No, the elevator does not go sideways. I'm really sorry you didn't know there are fish in the ocean. No, I can't do anything about it. No, our housekeeping services will not wipe your butt. If you are not able to do it yourself, I'm gonna need to ask you to leave our premises. Of course you can complain to the hotel director about it. Kick them out. I am very sorry you put your iPad, iPhone, and 3 other devices on one outlet with a cheap converter and started a fire in your room that destroyed them. We will not comp for your devices. Had to call security for this one. Luckily authorities were still around because we had a freaking fire. If you throw an electronic devices into the wall, it won't be covered by warranty, and it is certainly not my fault that said device doesn't start after doing that. If you don't pay your bill for several months, your service will get cut off. And no, we don't owe you money for the inconvenience of it. Also, if you don't pay your bill this month, you will owe more next month. And it's not because the price changed. I have had to explain to a shocking number of people that cellular signals can be blocked by structures, and garages and large buildings are well known for blocking cellular signals. I have also had to explain to a shocking number of people that battery life will vary based on usage. It will drain faster while you use it and slower while it's doing nothing. And even more surprising is the people I have to explain signal performance to people who lived through having to step outside to make a call because there was no signal inside. I used to work in a pancake restaurant. One day I was serving a customer. He didn't even bother to read the menu and he asked for pancakes with some specific jam. I told him that we do not have it by the menu and we do not have this kind of jam. He said that I should go to the nearby shop and get some for him because he doesn't want to eat pancakes with anything else. Yes, I needed to explain to an adult man that that's not how restaurants work. Worked in a coffee shop bookstore. We specialized in manga and comic books. You could either buy them or take a drink and read for as long as you wanted. Like, we didn't have any restrictions. You could read for 8 hours by buying a €1.50 coffee. Still had to explain multiple times a day that yes, you have to order and pay a drink if you want to sit and read. There was a good library where you could go to read for free, but we were a business and needed to make money. I've had people insulting me because of this. That's a really good deal actually. It's stupid people were angry about this. Sir, the CD is actually inside the case that you are trying to jam inside the CD player. What you need to do is open up that case, remove the disc, then insert it into the CD player. I worked in box office ticketing for several years. We do not control how fast mail is delivered to your home. If it was sold out when you asked the colleague to my right less than 1 minute ago, it's almost certainly still sold out now. No, we cannot discourage young people from attending orchestra concerts, and there's no problem with them enthusiastically cheering during the applause. No, I cannot tell you if your ex-girlfriend is attending this event and b, where she is sitting. If you ask me anything good coming up, I'm either going to tell you the popular shows in the future or the things I'm personally interested in. I don't know what constitutes good to you as you are a stranger. If you're picky about what events you like to attend, ask specific questions. No, I don't know about upcoming children's programming in Winnipeg while working at a venue in Toronto. If you want to leave a ticket for someone else to pick up, please provide their name rather than my sister will be right here. She's blonde with a black jacket. Your credit card needs to have money on it when you're checking into a hotel. Giving me your maxed out credit card to hold until you get paid isn't a thing. 1. Yes, the can of Crisco has a picture of crispy fried chicken on it. No, the can does not contain crispy fried chicken. 2. No, birth control pills are not 100% effective. This was explained to a woman apparently quite near her delivery. And 3. No, we don't have fans that only blow cold air. I worked at a Kmart for longer than I care to admit, so I'm sure I could come up with lots more, but these are the first 3 that come to mind. Give me your best stupid kid story. When I was 6 or 7, the older kid from next door brought out a bunch of jalapenos. Me being new to the kind of thing immediately believed him when he told me they were special pickles. So I stuffed one in my mouth and started chewing because who doesn't love pickles when you are 7? My mom found me outside about a minute later crying and spraying my face with the hose. Good times. There used to be battery operated lint removers that were basically a metal fan with sharp blades covered by a metal plate with holes in it. The holes allowed the lint balls on your sweater to be pushed into the blades where they would be sheared off. The beauty of this device was, you could push it on your skin and nothing would happen. Pushing your tongue onto it was a different story. I was too embarrassed to say what really happened, so I said I bit my tongue. Was a different story. My god, I cannot stop laughing at this. When I was very young, like in 2nd grade, we were reading the classic When You Give a Mouse a Cookie. At the end of the book, our teacher handed out tiny little cookie stickers about the size of a dime. Now being the attention-seeking little kid I crumpled it up into a ball and put it in my ear to show my friends. After showing them, I attempted to take it out, but my pudgy little fingers only managed to shove it farther back into my ear. I started to panic because I couldn't get it out. I didn't want to tell my teacher because I thought she would be mad, so I spent an entire school day with a sticker up my ear. When I got home, I was scared to tell my parents because I thought I would get in trouble. So later on, I snuck upstairs and grabbed my mom's tweezers. I was trying to dig around in my ear and once again managed to shove it farther in. Now you couldn't even see it in a mirror. Abandoning the tweezers, I eventually forgot about it. 4 years later, I had completely forgot about what happened. One day my ear was in a lot of pain for about a week. Eventually my parents decided to bring me to a doctor because they thought I had an ear infection. Now I forget what the doctor did, but eventually he decided there was something blocking my ear passage. They had to do a small operation and just use some bendy tweezer thing to pull out whatever it was. After a lot of pain, he pulled out a paperish ball covered in earwax. I was like, WTF. Then he uncrumpled it and I realized it was a cookie sticker. Everything came rushing back to me. The doctor and my mom were asking questions about how it got there and I just completely poker-faced and said I had no idea. I haven't told anyone that story ever, and I have no idea why. When I was a kid, I saw those commercials for Feed the Children that said for pennies a day you can feed a child. I figured pennies a day meant 3 cents and collected $10.98 in change, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to Feed the Children. I thought I had helped one child for a whole year, and added an extra 3 cents because it was a leap year. I never heard back. I told my parents to keep a lookout for any pictures of a starving kid I was supposed to hear back from in the mail, and when I never did, I figured the kid couldn't write. That's one of the sweetest things I have ever heard. When I was a little kid, 4 or 5, I was following my mother in a grocery store. Just like the cartoons movies, I decided to pull the corner watermelon from the well-stacked display pyramid of watermelons. Needless to say, about 25 of them tumbled off the display table and split open on the ground. I really would like to see a video of this happening, but has to be by accident. When I was a kid, 5 or 6, I sneaked a swig of my dad's can of beer, except it wasn't beer. He had finished it already and was using it as an ashtray, so instead I got hot cigarette ash pouring down my throat. Needless to say, I didn't understand what was so appealing about beer to adults for a few more years. I did the same thing except my dad chewed tobacco, drank me a can of spit. I tried to sharpen the head of a grasshopper in my pencil sharpener. I thought he'd come out with a pointy head. He didn't. R.I.P. Hoppy. When I was about 5 or 6, my older brother, by 2 years, tried convincing me that his shoes were strong enough to bend a nail. So he stepped on a nail. It didn't bend. It went through his foot. Stupid kid. When I was about 5 I had Incredible Hulk branded flip-flops. I became convinced that they were just as invulnerable as the Hulk, and went Hulk stomp on a pile of old boards with an upturned nail. A nail went right through the flip-flops and into my foot. Screaming for my mom, tetanus shot, the works. Having constantly heard how dangerous cars are all my life, I realized I had never actually seen anyone be hurt by a car in any way. This led my 5-year-old self to believe that cars were, in fact, completely harmless and everyone else is a stupid head. I tested this theory by running onto a very busy road and standing in front of an oncoming vehicle. I remember seeing the driver's face melt into one of sheer terror upon seeing me as the poor guy swerved directly through a fence, into someone's yard and crashed into their living room. I decided I would not run this experiment a second time. Seeing how far a bicycle will coast on its own down a hill. First few times it fell over immediately. Unfortunately the idiot in me forgot where the hill ended. It rolled into someone's yard, hit a little hill, flew through the air and smashed through a window into a garage. This in turn hit a shelf with a few unsealed cans of paint, and that, of course citing Murphy's Law, covered the whole entire garage floor in paint. That would have been acceptable, except for there was an open convertible in the way. Later I found out it was a classic and our family was sued for damages. We lost. The classic convertible was a '69 Mustang. I still haven't forgiven myself to this day. Well, a repaint and a new interior isn't too bad. Where it hurt was the cans denting the bodywork. I'm not sure the actual amount it added up to, but it was a pretty penny, in the several thousands at the very least. I stuck gum in my eye to impress a girl. Needless to say, she wasn't impressed, and I got to spend half a day getting my eye cleaned. She wasn't the one. I know this young kid who was convinced to thickly coat all of his hair with roofing tar. It was the kind really gooey tar that is used for sealing holes in roofs, loaded with kerosene and pitch black and all. The kid was somehow convinced it could be washed out with plain water. He gets a flat piece of stick and really smears on a thick coat, so thick it looks like some kind of heavy helmet. Well, when I arrived home and my parents looked at me, they completely freaked out and proceeded to wash my hair with anything reasonably safe, even tried J's fluid for a bit. Having no luck with anything, I was subjected repeatedly to a thorough kerosene shampoo. Now anyone who knows tar also knows it leaves behind a wickedly black stain on one's skin. Realizing they just couldn't get it all out, they dragged me to a barber who proceeded to remove as much hair as he could with scissors, then a pair of electric clippers which he had to rinse in kerosene regularly to keep the blades moving. Then a complete head shave. The stain? Well, that just wouldn't come out right away, so I was sent home with this incredible dark brown skin tone which matched my hairline perfectly. I was like this for more than a week, and as my hair grew back it had a strange hue to it for a while too. My normal hair color was blonde. TLDR, tarred not feathered. Crown of brown. Was young and foolish. I like that your story starts as "I knew this kid, he," and admits a paragraph later that it was you. I saw all kinds of stupid kid things while camping with Boy Scouts. One time I saw a kid try to cut down a tree with a hammer. He actually got about halfway through. I also saw a kid forget to drain grease from his griddle after cooking large amounts of bacon, then leave it over a lit stove unattended, causing a grease fire. He responded by knocking the whole stove over, propane tank and all. Good thing it had just rained. I'd got 2 stories. Happened very recently. First was a kid who found his dad's nail gun and was mucking about with it, as kids would do. He and his friends were reclining on a sofa on the back porch with their feet up, shooting at cans of Coke some distance away. Then a large fly lands near his feet and he decides to egged on by his friends. shoot it. Suffice to say, he shot a nail straight through his great toe and pinned it against the railing on his veranda. His friends somehow managed to free him and he presented to the ED department where I work in a lot of pain. Second was a 12-year-old girl who wanted to get a belly piercing. Obviously mom said no, so she reads up some stuff on the internet, sterilizes her belly button with some mouthwash, gets herself a fishhook and pierces herself. Only problem was, the fishhook was barbed. Kids do stupid things but adults do worse. Till some people say great toe instead of big toe. Stupid kids. The worst one I heard was secondhand from my sister, regarding the younger brother of her friend. These kids were about 14, mucking about, and they found a hedgehog. One of them decides the most hilarious course of action would be to throw it at his friend's face. Prickles went straight into this kid's eye, and he has one eye now. Idiot. The one who threw, obviously. Experiencing serious second-hand pain right now. Those kids at arcades, who pretend they're playing a game when they're not. They get really into it too with the sound effects and all. More into it than people who are actually playing the game. It's awkward when some kid is pretending to play a game that you're actually trying to play, but you don't know if you should wait for him to end his pretend game. One time I was at an arcade and several kids started watching me play. My dad saw this and thought I was just pretending to play, preventing all the other kids from playing. He ripped me away from the machine and some other kids started playing on my quarter. He later claimed he didn't realize that when it said insert coin it was for another player. My stupid kid is me. My neighbor and I used to think it was hilarious to roll eggs in the street, hide behind her mom's pampas grass and watch unsuspecting cars run over them. One day while grabbing more eggs from the fridge, my dad caught me and for some reason I told him what we were doing. He screamed at me and made me put them back. I put them back but I already had a couple in my pockets that I kept. I ran straight back down to my friend's house with the goods. We rolled our egg and hid giggling behind her pampas grass. But this time the car stopped. The door flew open and I saw my dad's angry red face. Get in this freaking car. Now he whipped my butt also. He must really love eggs. This is a story from way back when my friends and I were just 12 years old. There was this huge wasp's nest outside my house that we used to pass on our way into town. One day we were passing it and I heard this huge shout. WHOOOAR. I look back and saw my friend Dan had just thrown a massive rock directly into the wasp's nest. A swarm visibly emerged from the hive and started surrounding him. The rest of us, of course, ran, with him and the angered swarm essentially chasing us. Every time I looked back he was flailing off another item of his clothing, as the wasps were getting in under all of it. Once we had reached a safe distance from him, I looked back to see him only in his underwear. Then he shouted how the frick did they get in there and started beating his own crotch incessantly trying to kill off the wasps that had penetrated his nether regions. I was convulsing with laughter. He ended up with an insane amount of stings and whenever we asked him why he did it he just replied I really hate wasps. TLDR. When my friend was 12 he threw a large rock into a hive, angered the swarm, and ended up having to strip down to get rid of all the wasps under his clothing. I thought your friend was stupid until he said he hated wasps. I totally agree with him. It was worth it. My younger brother was 7 years old at the time and I was stuck with him at the mall. We were at the music store and I was looking at the cassette singles on the wall, circa 1989 to 1990ish, and he was trying to show off how long he could hold his breath. He kept tugging my arm in his show off attempts but I kept ignoring him, over and over again. Finally, he collapses into the wall of cassettes knocking almost all of them off the wall, so he's passed out the floor. I'm embarrassed because I'm 12 years old, so I'm dragging his body out of the store while all the adults look at me like I'm a horrible person. I never asked if he was okay, just verbally assailed him for being stupid as I'm trying to revive him. This is a horrible story and I apologize to an entire race for it. I grew up in a pretty small, rural town in Canada and unlike it is now, there were very few people of color. When I was in kindergarten, some 23 years ago, we had a black child join our class and I guess for most of us it was one of our first experiences with someone of another race. A group of kids thought it would be fun to take the chalk box, full of white chalk dust, from the board and pour it on him. I was not involved, but I remember laughing as the kids were smearing it on him. I don't remember seeing him after that. I only remembered this incident a couple years ago and I just feel really bad about it. I hope the kid grew up okay and it didn't mess him up. Stupid adult. I just learned from my spell checker that I've been spelling kindergarten wrong my whole life. When I was young, probably between 2-4 years old, I would openly and verbally point out black people. I have a vivid memory of being in the grocery store checkout line and pointing out to my mom the man ahead of us, with a big smile on my face, and saying that man is black. At the time, I was totally oblivious as to why this may not be socially acceptable. When I was 2 or something I thought that soil was chocolate so I proceeded to eat lots of it. Apparently I had all sorts of things crawling out of my mouth. A few years ago, when I was 15 or 16, I was mixing sugar and potassium nitrate over a gas cooker outside. The mix got too hot. Boom. It set my hair on fire and nearly blinded me, as well as making my entire face look like a beetroot. I have a lot of Lego, the Mindstorms stuff, all the extras and whatnot. One day I decided to take a few motors and step them all down, so I had frickloads of torque and very low speed. I stuck my finger in between the 2 slowest gears. It pretty much ripped a whole bunch of flesh very gradually out of my finger. Because the power pack was within the box containing all the gears, it was very hard to get it to stop. I tried to remove a wart with a soldering iron once. I had a big length of thick rope in the garden, so I attached a few weights to it and threw it around the branch of a really tall tree. I proceeded to pull myself up, something like 10 meters from the ground, which is heck of a freaking height when you're 10 or so. Once I got to the top, I disattached the weights that were thrown around the branch. The rope fell. I had no way of getting down. I sat up in that tree for a good hour or so before my mum eventually found me and brought a ladder. I've done way more stupid things. I'll say if I remember any of it. Oh, here's another good one. I was at my ex-grandparents' house some years ago when I discovered a BB gun. I shot myself point blank in the leg with it to see if it hurt. It freaking hurt. My dad told me when I was 3 years old he told me not to poop my pants. So one day I was playing outside and I just pinched a loaf right in the driveway. Henceforth, I shall refer to pinching a loaf in the driveway as punching trees. I used to work at a daycare during church hours, and there was a 2-year-old whose coping mechanism was to reach down shirts and grope a breast. No joke, it was comforting to him whenever a new situation came up. Well, eventually he decided I was his favorite. More that the other helpers started handing him off to me regularly, so I got groped quite a bit. After a while I didn't think anything of it, though it was always a surprise. Come winter I wore a turtleneck to work one day. All was well until we went to a different classroom for music time. Upset by this change, he demanded to be picked up, and I obliged. He promptly set about trying to plunge his hand down my shirt for some sweet, comforting boobies, only to be denied by the turtleneck. Cue the most explosive tantrum I have ever seen a 2-year-old throw. I'm not saying he was a stupid kid per se, just that it was one of the dumbest situations I've ever been in, and one that was hilarious to explain to the other helpers. I saw a kid at a bus stop have a total meltdown because his mom wouldn't let him eat cigarette butts off the ground. I don't think that's a very rare occurrence. Poor mom. I work at a children's hospital on an epilepsy monitoring unit. Believe it or not, we have quite a few kids that come in and fake seizures. We hook them up to an electroencephalogram by placing electrodes on the client's entire upper head, forehead, skull cap, temporal lobes, etc. From there, we can read their brain waves and watch them and their EEG readings from a control room. The computers allow the nurses and technicians to identify kids who have seizures. We had a young girl come in one day who was 15. She seemed very normal, but 15 minutes into the initial nurse-to-client interview, she snapped into an alternate person. After asking initial questions, we found that this family's grandmother is a witch and has possessed this young girl. She began speaking in Spanish very fluently as her deceased dad of 6 years ago. She was extremely convincing. Her family began asking for holy water, as if we just keep this lying around. The family truly believed this girl was being possessed by the dead. They began asking the jig questions as if she was a fortune teller. They asked how much money will we win tonight if we go to the casino. She had answers, but after they asked questions about whether her parents used a condom when she was conceived, things got awkward for her. She had another episode of her father speaking through her in Spanish, then slipped into a seizure quickly afterwards. She shook her upper body violently, shoulders moving and all. Usually when shoulders are moving, it's a sure sign of a fake. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and these seizures looked pretty legit. Her EEG told a different story. When a client is seizing, their EEG spikes erratically and is very different from the normal looking reading. It is at this point the nurse I worked with rushed into the room to administer a sternal rub. These hurt like crap. Try it. Apply pressure on your sternum with a fist and pointer and thumb being the point of pressure. If a client is actually seizing, with most seizures they won't be able to feel the pain. This girl's face turned poor quick and she immediately stopped. Fake, stupid kid. We never found out why she did what she did, but figured that her family encouraged it for whatever season. Or she could have wanted attention. I got excited thinking I was seeing an actual possessed girl, but she was a fraud. She thought twice about fake seizing and we didn't see another seizure under our care. TLDR. Stupid kid gets caught fake seizing. Stupid kid gets a hard sternal rub to provide evidence of a true seizure. Not even a kid, an army recruit. My dad was a teacher in the army on some kind of exercise, camping, like the army likes to do, boiling eggs on a portable stove. He asks some recruit to get the eggs out of the water because they are done. The guy attempts to do it with his hand. He obviously was not aware how hot water needs to be to cook stuff. A guy I live with is in the army. Last Christmas we did Secret Santa and he had to buy a present for me, whilst another girl in the house had to buy a present for him. Christmas comes and he gives her a present because she had bought him one. His words: he didn't understand the concept of Secret Santa. I never got a present from him. I once saw a kid in a public bathroom who wanted to make the automatic toilet flush. He waved around in front of it, and the toilet didn't flush. So he posed as you would normally stand if you were urinating. To fake it out, the toilet must know that trick, because it still didn't flush. It was hilarious to witness. I also had a kid pee on my shoes once while I was taking a poo. Somehow he sprayed pee sideways from the adjoining stall. I was cleaning off my shoes when the father came out of the stall with his kid. He was very apologetic. I told him I got kids, it's cool. I'm just trying to figure out how he did that. The physics of standing up and pee under a wall defy science. Now you're thinking with portals. Not exactly a little kid, but one of the college kids volunteering in a lab I worked in said you could set your finger on fire and it doesn't hurt. He of course meant to put alcohol on your finger and set it alight. Sort of, not a trick that I haven't seen or done myself before. He is talking to one of the other students and I was going about my business. I look over to see he has coated his hands with alcohol and is reaching for the Bunsen burner. I yell but I'm too late. The flame has spread to his hands, and he is standing there smiling doing his best Human Torch impression, until his smile changes. Hey, this is starting to burn. Hey, get it off. Get it off. And he runs around the room shaking his hands and, of course, shooting alcohol everywhere. Burning alcohol. It is on his shirt. It is on the counter. On the floor. He is lucky he didn't get any in his hair. It all burns out pretty quickly and I had him run his hands under warm water for a while. There weren't any serious burns that he needed real first aid for. But, Jesus, what a freaking idiot. I can't believe he was a biochem major. Another instance involved a kid at the gym. There was a hamstring machine there where you would stand and the bar was behind your ankle. You would raise your one leg bending at the knee to lift the bar. Then you do the other leg. This moron tries both legs at the same time, and does it about 8 times before he realizes that something isn't right or that he can't hold on to the handles anymore. It wasn't as funny as the fire thing, but at least the kid was more of a kid and not a moronic 20-year-old. This happened to a friend of mine. Yeah, that'll do nicely. He was told to take a bath and that he has to wash everything. To which he responded, everything? Even those things that help me breathe? His mother asked him which things he was talking about. He pointed to his crotch saying, these things down here, because once I squeezed one once and I couldn't breathe. Upon being told this story, he didn't remember the bath conversation, but he does remember giving his boys a squeeze. This is the best one by far. What is the dumbest thing anybody has ever seriously said to you? Excitedly told me that a stripper he bought a lap dance from liked him so much that she asked him to come back again to see her. A buddy of mine is like this with bartenders servers. We go to the same bar pretty frequently and he's convinced that the bartenders there are attracted to him. He doesn't understand that the reason that they come over and talk to him is because he always tips them a minimum of $20 each night. Normally it's more. Is this all the bleach we have? This was said by my sister, who was holding a gallon of bleach in each hand. Her plan? She was going to fill the bathtub up with bleach and bathe in it because she wanted to bleach her hair blonde. While watching The Mummy 2, these mummies are chasing a bus through London. My mom asks, they didn't use real mummies, did they? Tell her they couldn't because we ate them all. Had a roommate in college that would drive me everywhere cause she had a car and I didn't. The first time I got on the highway with her, she got on the left lane and floored it. We were going 90 plus on a 60. I freaked out and asked her why the heck she was going so fast. She said, "What's the big deal? There's no speed limit on the left lane on a highway. You can go as fast as you want." She refused to slow down till we had to take our exit. We had a long argument on why that wasn't true that involved calling several people and googling things to prove it to her. TBF, I legit asked how much higher is the speed limit in the left lane and driver's ed because universally everyone ignores the speed limit there. Facebook post. Dude, Ashton Kutcher totally looks like the guy from that 70s show. That is Ashton Kutcher. What? How? He would have only been a baby in the 70s. A loved one recommended putting whiskey in my baby's bottle to help with teething. Not rub her gums with it. Bad idea anyway, but straight put the whiskey in her bottle. Look lady, the alcoholism runs deep in this family. I'm not about to get her started in her first year of life. There's whiskey in the baby's jar. While driving with my sister's then boyfriend to go disc golfing, he was staring up in the sky very intensely. I asked him what he was doing and he replied, "Just doing my part for the environment." Confused, I inquired further. He then went on to say how chemtrails from planes are spreading chemicals, but if you stare at the chemtrails, you can use your willpower to get rid of them. He was bat crap crazy, lizardman crazy. This is probably the most wholesome story involving someone who believes in chemtrails we'll ever hear. After having just boarded a train from Budapest to Vienna, a woman approached me and asked in haltingly slow English, "Does this train go to Vienna?" I answered yes, and that I was also going there myself. Her response, "You speak English very good. Where are you from?" To which I answered that I was from Canada. She then said, "I am from Florida. Do you know where that is?" That one hurts. Had a friend that didn't realize dogs were the result of selective breeding. She thought all dog species existed in nature somewhere. The thought of packs of pugs hunting for food in the forest still makes me chuckle. Fun fact, the reason many tiny yapping dogs come from China is that they were designed to be portable alarms. They bark at strangers, so this would alarm palace guards of intruders. They were deployed in the hundreds in the palace walls. Imagine being an assassin and being swarmed by 50 plus Shih Tzus and pugs. Something out of The Mummy with the Beatles. My friend, when she was 18, we used to have baby chicks and then we had chickens. I don't know what happened to the baby chicks. I thought nurses only flirted with doctors and was there to look pretty. 19-year-old classmate back in high school, who was very disappointed after shadowing a nurse for career day. TBH, a lot of nurses end up being a doc's second wife. Source, I'm a doc. Not married to nurse though. When talking about my relatives that died in the Holocaust, my friend said, "Man, that sucks. Did you at least know them? I was born long after World War II. Kind of like when my kids ask me if I have ever seen a dinosaur." Turkey is vegan. Random lady stating that she's vegan and then proceeding to order a club sandwich. I was the waiter. Guy, you have the most beautiful green eyes. Me, my eyes are blue. Guy, crap. I couldn't remember if they were green or blue, so I guessed. Me, I'm standing right in front of you. You were looking right at my face when you said that. Why didn't you just look at my eyes to see what color they are? Guy, I didn't think of that. Was this Elton John? My husband is Colombian and he was speaking in Spanish to a co-worker from Puerto Rico. Another co-worker overheard them and was flabbergasted that they spoke the same language. She asked where my husband had learned to speak Puerto Rican. This was a 40-year-old woman with a high school diploma and access to the internet. I honestly thought she was kidding at first, but sadly she wasn't. Why do we have to turn the printer on for it to work? My 45-year-old coworker, closely followed by intense, life-altering revelation tone. If you were paid more, you'd have more money. My mum. LMAO. I've worked with a few coworkers over the years. Thank you for the new term. P. I'm going to fall on my sword for this one. I once very confidently told a room full of women I worked with that X must be mistaken because women don't have a colon. Prostates. I got them confused. Luckily, we were all on really good terms, so I just got laughed at for a few months. Women wear perfume, only men wear colon S. Don't they speak Russian in Brazil? Because Russia and Brazil are right next to each other? Close runner-up. What came first? World War I or World War II? Clearly that second one was a dedicated Star Wars fan. IVV6I23. I was talking about how I was getting a birth control implant in a few weeks and someone asked if I was scared of getting stuck up my butt. Had to clarify with him that birth control implants don't go up the butt. In fact, when things go up the butt, you don't even need birth control. I was waiting at the DMV, and my baby was asleep in his carrier on the floor. Some totally normal looking middle-aged guy in a suit leaned over and smiled at him, then said, "How cute. Are his eyes open yet?" Dude literally thought humans were like puppies or kittens. LOL, I would have said no, but his tail is growing nicely. The last time I spoke to my mother I was in the process of designing a desalination plant to take salt from seawater to make it drinkable. My mother always felt the need to find all the negative things in everything I did. She said it was a stupid idea to pursue as it would take the water away from the fish and cause more harm than good. Been over a year now. Dumb bee. All the fish are dead. I hope you're happy. An old school friend refused to breastfeed or formula feed their baby. They gave the baby milkshakes instead. Because your no milk is milk. Also my mother told me, in all seriousness, that we have belly buttons because that's where our tails used to be. I bet stupidity is the leading cause of childhood malnutrition. From the world's dumbest boss, while scribbling a co-worker's birthday card with an inane message about the children's rhyme Old MacDonald. How do you spell E-I-E-I-O? Are we sure it wasn't originally E-E-I-E-I-O? My sister-in-law was afraid to drive up hills because she was afraid if her car didn't make it up, it would flip over backwards. My mom has this phobia. Trips to San Francisco were ridiculous. Used to work with a guy who can't understand what 50% meant. Like, it's half dude, just divide by 2 in the calculator. My 17-year-old friend told me she didn't swallow after blowing her BFBC. She wasn't on the pill and he hated wearing condoms. I was confused and asked what she meant. She looked at me like I was stupid and said she didn't swallow BC. That's how you get pregnant. By swallowing after a BJ. I had to explain to her that she was, in fact, not correct. That's Texan abstinence only sex education for ya. It's true if you are a Corydoras catfish. After my dad has emergency dialysis a few months ago, he passed shortly after, and I was the only person with him at the surgery hospital because of COVID restrictions and generally handling things. My uncle called me and said don't count your chickens before they've hatched, in reference to my dad having a good day, and now I know why daughters don't get married, so they can look after their dads. I put the phone down and cried bitterly with my mother because I didn't want my dad to see me cry. While eating out, we asked our server to bring us some ice and he asked if we wanted real ice. He wasn't trying to be funny and looked confused when we asked what other kind of ice there is. You would have got a real surprise if he brought you a bag of MAKA ice. My uncle married a woman who already had kids, so I guess they were my cousins. Marriage didn't last long. Boy oh boy were they dumb as frick. One came and stayed with us for a week or so and had never been to my city before. She was an idiot. 2 quotes stand out. 1. She thought lions were fairy tale creatures. 2. While on the train an Indian couple came and sat across from us. She leans over and whispers so loudly, "Those terrorists are going to kill us." I don't think I have ever been more embarrassed in my life. If you see something, say something. A friend owns a bakery and I was helping her out during the busy holiday season. I was at the counter cashing out orders and assisting customers place orders and purchase ready-made pastries. One lady needed a birthday cake. I showed her the case cakes we had available and the one she chose had cake crumbs coating the sides. She wanted happy birthday written on the side of the cake, on the crumbs. I told her the writing would not stick to the crumbs or the crumbs and icing would fall off together. She looked at me and said, "Well, I could do it if I knew how." I waited a beat and responded, "Well, I could do brain surgery if I knew how." So, I guess we're in the same boat. She got my point and opted to have happy birthday written on ribbon and laying across the top of the cake. What kind of cake request is that, LMAO? I've never heard of that before. Stereotypical blonde popular girl raised her hand in science class, 10th grade, and asked the teacher how did Mother Nature know what the president's faces looked like to naturally form Mount Rushmore. Teacher had to leave the room for a moment to compose himself before explaining it was man-made. Crazy how nature do that. I once had a black man tell me, a white woman, that black women's periods are literally just a single drop of blood, which is why it's called a period. I was literally speechless. Oh god, do I wish so. My co-worker explaining the taste and texture of a certain food. To this day I have forgotten what food he was trying to explain, but he said, "It's like a fig Newton but without the fig and without a Newton." Totally straight-faced and serious. Years ago, my wife, her sister's daughter, and I were walking down the street on a summer's day and we stopped in a frozen yogurt place. Everyone ordered one. My wife sampled hers and asked me if it was bad. I took a lick and it was definitely spoiled. I demanded my money back. The kid behind the counter refused to refund me. I said the yogurt was bad and I wasn't going to pay for bad product. Then the idiot says to me, "Well, if it was bad, you shouldn't have eaten it." WTF? I replied, "How the heck are you supposed to know it's bad if you don't eat any?" I got my money back. I took a DVD back to Walmart because in the middle it stopped playing. They said, "But you opened it." How the frick can I find out it doesn't work without opening it? While watching Big Fish, after a character is turned into a fish, my sister's boyfriend turned to me and asked if the movie was based on a true story. Daycare nurse, the sun and the moon can't be up at the same time. I'm looking at the moon in the sky, during the day, behind her. Teaching my students about graphing relationships using a story about my real life experience of skydiving. I told the whole story including the chute opening and peacefully gliding back to the earth. Student raises his hand and as serious as can be asks, "Did you die?" I work at a vet clinic. Owner, my dog has a bunch of ticks on his belly. Lift dog up to show off his abdomen that is full of scabs. Me, Mom, those are not ticks. Those are his nipples. Owner, those aren't his nipples. Male dogs don't have nipples. To sum it up, this lady ripped off this poor dog's nipples because she genuinely thought that male dogs do not have any. It took, sadly, quite a bit of time to inform her that male dogs do in fact have nipples. Peeing after sex will prevent pregnancy. Also, there is no such thing as bisexual people. These statements both came from the same dude, by the way. Honestly, it's crazy how people can be this stupid. My older cousin told me to have the guy put cold water inside me afterward and I couldn't get pregnant. She had twins at 16. Thank God I actually paid attention in sex ed. After hearing about bestiality, a girl at work was confused as to why she hadn't seen any horse babies. Her word, walking around. A 22-year girl at work, whom I'm not close to at all, asked me if I would co-sign on a 4BD 3-bar house for her to live in with her 10-month-old baby. I'm going through a divorce and live in a 2BD house with my boyfriend and our 3 kids. I once began a story of a bad car accident I had with the line, "So a few months ago I flipped my car, and this girl, Honestly very sweet and with sincere shock and concern, replied, "Oh my god, were you inside?" I then decided to change the story and falsely explained that I wasn't inside the car, but had been very angry and flipped it with my bare hands like the Incredible Hulk. Not to me, but my dad told me about this old buddy of his. They were watching the Olympics and the camera showed a shot of the moon and my dad's friend asked him, "Hey, Kevin, do you think that's the same moon we have?" Dude was apparently serious but very drunk, as he always was. My friend's sister said, with a straight face, "The movie Monsters Inc. is tied to her pedophile ring. Apparently something about the screams of children are pleasing to Hollywood elites and Democrats. She really believes this stuff and posts about it on TikTok like it's fact. And I love how her kids can't watch a cartoon because she thinks it has subliminal messaging that will turn them into perverts, but they live on Mountain Dew and MC Donald's cheeseburgers." When I was a river raft guide we'd get some dumb questions, but my favorite was, "Are we going to get off the river here at the same spot we're putting in?" No we're not. Or sometimes yes we will if they were from Ohio. Oh, I remember the people who thought actual freaking rivers were fake like a lazy river. No, Linda, the massive butt river in the gorge surrounded by mountains is not fake. Is Hawaii a continent and there are only 3 continents? Both said by my friend who I got into a Discord call with to teach them that there are 7 and a possible new continent. My computer nearly killed itself for my friend's stupidity. The Americas, Eurasia, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica makes 4 minimum, if you go purely by adjoining land masses. What is the dumbest rule at your job? I'm not allowed to contact mall security or the police without district manager approval. I could have been just robbed at gunpoint in my store. My first call is supposed to be my DM to tell them I got robbed and can I pretty please call the police? I would sue the dang company if I got fired for calling the cops if I got robbed. I can't see a judge siding against you. I'm a librarian. If somebody asks me where anything is, I have to redirect them to the front desk, no matter what. Example of how this is done. Where's the bathroom? I'm pretty sure the front desk can help you with that. Well, today I got sent home for wearing the new uniform I was just issued and told to change back into the old one. I guess they haven't officially started the new uniform yet. The thing is, I'm the only security guard at an empty building with no one at it to even see me. All I did was trade a grey shirt for a white one. All the markings are the same. Seems pointless to me. If 2 snacks fall from the vending machine, we have to turn in the extra one or it's considered stealing company property. Had a manager follow me to the front desk to turn in some cookies last week. I work for a very superstitious Korean man. The rules are no red pens, no shaking your legs and no whistling after the sun goes down. These aren't official rules, but he gets very serious about these things and doesn't allow joking about ghosts or supernatural. Worked at a Korean airline. One day we were given tags for our new crew bags. One guy gets out his red Sharpie and starts to write his name. The instructor grabs the tags and gets the pilot some new tags and told us not to write our names in red ink. No Korean pilot would fly with us if our bag tags had our names written in red ink. A long time ago I worked at a Navy shipyard. There were 2 rules, Ray. First aid kits at each work site. The OSHA type part of the organization had a rule that each work site had to have a first aid kit. The org that ran the workmen's comp stuff had a rule that first aid kits were prohibited at work sites. Any injury had to go to the industrial dispensary to establish a paper trail. Work site supervisors were screwed if they had a first aid kit. They were screwed if they didn't have one. The shipyard commander, a 4-striper, called the heads of each organization into his conference room. He told them, when you 2 come to an agreement about first aid kits, call my office. I will have the Marine at the door let you out. I'm tired of hearing about freaking first aid kits. No first aid kit on site is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Jesus Christ. Please tell me you guys have the kits. If the microwave and printer run at the same time, it trips a breaker that only property management can reset. So whenever anyone microwaves something they have to yell microwave so nobody prints. I mean, that's not that dumb of a rule. It's stupid that your company has that problem and it should be fixed, but it sounds necessary in that situation, albeit funny. We are not allowed to refer to the Xerox machine as Bob Marley anymore, even though it still jams way more than it Xeroxes. This is because apparently the CEO had tween daughter come one day and she got very upset when she thought the staff were keeping her from seeing Bob Marley in real life. She did not know that Bob Marley is dead. This made the CEO got stressed out and yell at us about the nickname. That is a freaking hilarious nickname. In our small hospital department, there's an oxygen line W, a giant on-off valve that only affects our small department. If there's a fire, I can't turn the valve to close it. I have to call the nursing supervisor, who is off-site, to come down to the fire and turn it off for me. I'd say in the event of an emergency, break the rule and take your chances. I am not familiar enough with the rules of my job to choose the dumbest one, but at my old job, if a customer purchased something, then made it to the door with merchandise he or she didn't pay for, the cashier that rang them up was held accountable for it. We can expense Starbucks, but not food from Starbucks, because one guy was living off of Starbucks food for 3 months. Worst part was that he was an extremely well-paid engineer, but frugal as frick. There's always some guy who ruins it for everybody. Because of some new shoots we got working who don't understand the concept of not using a phone when there is work to be done, everyone has to put their cell phone in a bucket at 6 PM, or whenever the evening rush starts. Frick you, Kerrigan. We're not technically allowed to talk about our salaries with each other, even though the amount we each individually make is a matter of public record. That means that if you get a promotion, you have to either file a public records request to find out what your peers are making, and therefore pee off your new boss, or you have to violate the directive. It makes it pretty darn hard for an employee to negotiate. I'm entrusted with the care of mentally handicapped clients, including being trained in first aid, CPR, and the Heimlich maneuver, but apparently changing a light bulb or adjusting the thermostat in the group home where I work is too big a responsibility for me to be allowed to do. My last manager, global company, tried to tell us that if she saw us at each other's desks discussing non-work related things, we had to keep track of those minutes and take them as vacation. She didn't last long. Ha 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 ha. Women aren't allowed to lift anything. Literally anything. I was going to dump a trash can full of shredded paper in the dumpster last week and my boss caught me, made me put the trash can down, and go find someone to dump it for me. I was literally lifting the thing with one hand. As my job requires a lot of lifting and I hate asking for help constantly, I have mastered the art of picking up 50+ LB boxes and running with them so no one catches me. Pretty sure that's sexism and you can sue for that and discrimination, especially if you have proof that they only allow the men to do it. Do not throw any personal items in company dumpsters or waste receptacles. All items to be discarded must be taken home. You cannot leave 250 miles of the area without getting your request to leave said area approved. And you have to take lots of online and in-person classes on how to be safe, not to beat your wife, not to drink and drive, and how to not be stressed out, and wear a reflective belt everywhere. I work construction. We're not allowed to tell the new guys how many newbies died in their first week. Young guys don't naturally think about safety. They think they'll live forever. Your gravity doesn't give a crap what you think. Stay away from the ledges and open elevator shafts. Let me explain. 1. When we say guys die in their first week, we really mean they die before they know the risks of the job. The time frame isn't always a week from when they start. 2. The company I work for are huge. We have 20,000 employees working at over 65 main sites. Much of that is at industrial sites in the oil gas field. The work is dangerous. 3. Safety is a huge priority for the company. You won't stay employed if you don't take safety seriously. 4. Everyone that starts is told of all the dangers of the job. We don't hide that from them. 5. The boss doesn't want us mentioning the deaths because it brings back a lot of bad memories for the guys who were there. And the new guys usually think we're either making crap up, trying to scare them, or they just don't care. So it doesn't really make them think of act in a safe manner. I think they should know. 6. Just because we don't specifically talk about the deaths doesn't mean we don't talk about previous accidents and safety issues. We do, in detail. 7. Construction is freaking dangerous. Most newbies just don't get that. 8. If and when someone dies or is seriously hurt, all work is stopped. At 20,000 and of us stop working, we all, in our teams, go over what happened, what could be done to prevent it, and if safety procedures weren't followed, we go over what the procedure is and why following it would have prevented the accident. 9. With all that in place, it doesn't matter. Crap keeps happening. It's bad. It's the worst part of the job, and it can really frick with your mind. 10. No one who runs a team gets to that point without proving they know their crap, proving that they work in a safe manner, and more importantly that they look out for the girls who work with them. At the daycare where I used to work, 1. Eat the same food as the kids during meal times to promote healthy habits and model good table manners. 2. Do not serve yourself until all of the children are served and have had as many servings as they'd like. 3. Do not eat when the children are not eating. 4. Do not eat unless the children are finished. 5. Meal times require staff to be actively serving the children and regulating behavior. They are not a staff lunch break. So basically we have to eat their food, but can't eat their food, but can't pack a lunch because we aren't allowed to eat different food, but we can't eat the prepared food. And there was no fixed menu, so we could fudge similar enough food from home to share. And we have to eat when they eat, but we can't be eating while they're eating because we have to do our job, and we can't take it in shifts because we have the minimum staff to child ratio in rooms at all times to avoid waste. 99% of us just ate whatever the frick we wanted during nap time if all the kids were asleep or the awake ones got soothed in shifts so we could eat. The other 1% didn't work over meals or just ate whatever. Do not eat when the children are not eating. Do not eat unless the children are finished. What? Supervisors aren't allowed to have any unnecessary contact with employees under them outside of work. This wouldn't be that idiocy if it weren't for the fact that the supervisors are just other teenagers that got conned into taking on a bunch more work for a 0.50 raise. My brother works at a certain restaurant redneck gift store with old time candy, and their rule is absolutely 100% no outside of work contact between a manager and an employee. If they find out you talk to each other, go out for a beer, Facebook friend each other, anything, both parties are immediately terminated, the manager and the hourly. You can finish your work on time. You can log in and log out on time. No one cares. The ones who get praise are people who work late. And why do they work late? Because they can't finish the work on time. But it's fine. Bob is working late and taking up so much load for company. No frick you. Bob is working late because he can't fix a single line error for 4 fricking days. Bob knows exactly where that line error is. My dad is a flight nurse. He has a flight suit that he carries anything he could possibly need while transporting a patient. One day he came home all pee off. I carry all kinds of needles and drugs that can paralyze someone, but they won't allow me to have my moolie tool on me because it has a knife blade over 3 inches long. We train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't allow them to write frick on their airplanes because it's obscene. Colonel Kurtz. Our safety protocol states that if there is a fire and there are wheelchair-bound students or employees on the 2nd floor, we are to leave them at the top of the stairs for the firefighters and emergency personnel to help once they arrive. So, basically they get to burn to death. I work in a small programming company. We haven't set up any kind of version control yet, so to avoid overwriting other people's changes to packages and scripts, we have an item associated with each file. If you want to edit a file, you need to go to the person with that item and ask if they're done editing the file. If yes, you take the item, so the next person has to ask you. Thing is, these items are just whatever we had in the office at the time. Chart package is associated with a foot tall clay zombie gnome. Filter package is a pair of 3D glasses, which some people insist on wearing when editing that file. Those are the strangest too. We also have a few Kinder Egg toys and an empty bottle of Jack Daniels. We haven't set up any kind of version control yet. That would take you, literally, 10 minutes, tops. I worked somewhere that had a separate code for different parts of the building. Quite a few got locked in the stairwell without knowing. Not my current job, but at my old chain restaurant job we weren't allowed to give cups with bottles of soda. They had to purchase soft drink cups to have cups for their 2-liter, and it was ridiculous. I would promptly ask for a refund and leave, never to return. Here goes. So I work in a warehouse school that doubles as a program that employs mentally challenged people. It has a scared straight program for juvenile delinquents, and we also take prisoners from a work release program. I am a support worker, which means I am a normal, adult worker whose job is to keep production afloat. For one, we can't have knives in a warehouse where 90% of the jobs we do require a knife. Too many kids, prisoners, mentally ill people stabbing each other. We can't change the station to oldies because the subject matter is too suggestive. We can only talk about 3 subjects: sports, news, and the weather. If someone hugs you, protocol is to stand still. Do not hug back. Do not push away and wait for a teacher to pull the kid off of you. Here's some things us support workers have done and weren't fired for. Doing H in the bathroom. Doing H in a car. Doing H in someone else's car and then doing the owner of the car in broad daylight when the special kids are around. Getting fingered by a married co-worker outside of the office window and moaning loud enough for everyone to hear. Pulling 2 no-call, no-shows every week for a year. Me. Showing up s-faced drunk. Sometimes me. Smoking a blunt in the front parking lot. Half the workers get stoned on lunch break and the supervisor is fine with it. The assistant supervisor joins in. Giving a kid a cigarette. Me. Telling a kid to step back a few feet cause I can smell the dong on your breath. Dating a high school kid. The list goes on. Bonus story. We had a 300+ LB woman who wrote down H as her only past work experience on her application. She was hired, but left in the middle of her first day to see a John. Sister is a cheerleader for a professional sports team. They aren't allowed to talk to any of the players at all. If they have any interactions with them, they are fired immediately. Sucks cause I really want my sister to have Kevin Durant's babies. I think that's what they're trying to avoid. No hoodies. Jeans and tennis shoes are okay, but hoodies is where they draw the line. Just seems silly for an office with almost no dress code to be adamant about their employees not wearing hoodies even if it's raining. Except on Friday. Friday hoodies are okay. We're only allowed to use the bathroom in the employee break area. At least a good 3-minute walk from my workstation. Sometimes more if I'm a few floors up. I guess they're worried that a patron might be offended by pee next to us? I don't know. Oh my god. One of the employees pee next to me. This company's employees have to pee like everyone else. I'm not coming back to this place. Can't take lunch meals home. I totally have the right to decide when and where I put my food in my mouth. Total balls. I worked at a place like that. One free meal was a benefit, except you couldn't take it home, and you couldn't eat it on site because customers might see you. 100% proofing policy for alcohol purchases. It's not really stupid. It is just more of a nuisance for customers, and customers aren't afraid to let you know how they feel about being carded. But it isn't the store's rules or fault. We only have a restaurant liquor license, so we are obligated to card every single person to basically cover our asses. I'm not required to be at work on Fridays, but if I want to go out of town on a Friday I have to fill out a leave form and they will dock my pay. I'm salaried. That sound illegal. No employer can tell you where you can and can't go on your days off. Also, docking your pay for not showing up on a day you don't need to is also shady AF. I used to work at a company that was sponsored by Evian, and we would have 3 massive fridges with free bottled water that was restocked daily and never ran out. To make you drink it, our company cut the taps in the kitchen sink so you had no other choice but to drink it. Fine. But then our boss decided that 1 bottle, 330 ml, was the new limit of how much free water you could have. Imagine working in the summer and being told you're not allowed to have any water. It was especially mean as it was free for the company. I'm a web developer and every single part of the job can be done from home. However, we have to come into the office to work. I only have 1 meeting a week and it's just a conference call. Myself and my boss are the only 2 people in the office on the web team. The rest are in a city that's 2 states away. So it's not like I have to come into the office to collaborate with the team in person. Doesn't make sense. But I've only been there for a month, so I can't really question it yet. We aren't allowed to drink water. We are cashiers at a grocery store, and even on the summer's hottest days we are expected to go 3-4 hours without anything to drink. Now I'm a rebel, so I do it anyway because it's necessary for survival and crap, and most of my supervisors won't give me flack. But it's still there, and certain people will make a big deal of it. Hardware requirements. All laptops must have a camera and a microphone. Security requirements. Laptops with cameras and microphones must have them disabled. I teach 4th graders. We have a rule that we can only get 6 reams of paper to make copies per quarter. 9 weeks. I go through those in about 3 weeks and end up buying a crap load of paper. Trust me, I try to make less copies, but for some things I can't. Then our principal says that we must ask kids to donate at least 1 ream each so that I have paper for the year. We can fund wars, but I can't get paper? WTF. Like most school districts, while you are buying your own paper, I'm sure it's overloaded with superintendents and management making bank. Then they beg for more tax dollars for the children. Teachers are one of the most important resources we have. They are with kids sometimes much more than the parents are. They should be taken better care of. If one other person has booked off any time, no one can book off time for that same day or days. The entire summer since the beginning of May, the 22nd of August has been fully booked off by only a few people. One guy was given a month and a half off. I was refused 3 days of vacation that I tried to book off 4 months in advance because of this. They don't want us wearing NPS work t-shirts. Instead they want us to wear the NPS work uniform shirts that are heavy and constricting. So when you're a laborer and you're bending over and picking crap up and needing to move freely so you can do your job effectively and comfortably, they don't really want us to wear the t-shirt for some reason. But we say frick it and wear it anyways. Jack in the Box. From the time the car pulled up to the speaker at the drive-thru, we were supposed to get them done in under 4 minutes. Now this might not sound that bad, but customers would always take forever to figure out what the heck they wanted, even though we had a preview board, and they would order their longest cook time item last. I'll have 2 tacos, 30 seconds to make, and a spicy chicken sandwich. The patty had to be fried for 3 minutes. We also weren't allowed to part people. We broke that rule a few times though. Once for some butthole who ordered 100 tacos and 52 junior bacon cheeseburgers. I'd just like to add to the discussion that if anyone is having you work in unsafe conditions, it's your right to call OSHA and make an anonymous tip. OSHA will make a surprise visit to your place of work and assess if anything is dangerous. If the employer is in fact breaking the law, they'll be fined up the butt. You should never have to take a risk with your safety. Oh, that could save their life? Well, sorry, you can't do that until the ambulance that's 15 minutes away gets there. Oh, they got maybe 5 without your intervention? Too bad. Guess you better grab the Eid. If you don't participate on after work pub on Fridays, then you will get a smaller raise. Participation accounts for 25% of our yearly raise. There was a hugging ban at my old job. Apparently one of the customers saw 2 employees hugging once and felt sexually harassed. I left that job pretty quickly after that. What did you do that made you question your own intelligence? I was sitting in traffic, and I noticed that all the other lanes were moving while mine hadn't budged an inch. I craned my neck trying to see what the holdup was, and finally figured out that I wasn't in a lane at all, but had been patiently waiting behind a line of parked cars. I frequently see a man cross a 4-lane road near my home. We have a fairly similar schedule and I see him often. He's well known in the neighborhood and he's deaf. No big deal. I once slowed down as he crossed the 4-lane and driving. White out, downpour rain, and I thought to myself, oh man, he doesn't know it's raining because he is deaf. I'm a sign language interpreter. This made me laugh so hard because so many people have moments like this when it comes to deaf people. You are not alone. Wanted to light a candle. Struck a match. Changed my mind about which candle I wanted to light, and decided to light a Yankee jar candle instead. Couldn't get the lid off with one hand. Stuck the lit match in my mouth so I could use both hands to get the lid off. Couldn't smell the scented candle. Could only smell singe nose air for days. Speaking of candles, I once thought my candle was making a weird sound, so I put my ear close to it to listen and burned some of my hair. Turns out it was my water bottle making the sound anyway. Went to a bank to withdraw money. Bank teller asked me how I would like it and I said, in cash. Bank teller just stared at me while my friend is dying of laughter. Meanwhile, I stand not understanding the issue. A few years ago I could not figure out if the new electric stove was on or off. I was familiar with flame stoves, so I stuck my hand flat on a heating coil. My hand had burned circular stripes all over it. The stove was hot. You gotta splash a little water on it and see if it dances. A couple months ago, my husband and I went on a walk. There are a lot of trails where we live and a couple of lakes. So we walked down a trail to the lake, turned left up another trail, and ended up at the top of a street. We start walking down the street and I realize there is a house that has a wishing well in their front yard like we do. I point it out to my husband and then I realize they have the same truck we do, too. I point out the truck and then I realize that we were in front of our own house. It wasn't my brightest moment. I once had a brain fart and forgot that porcupines were animals. I was hanging out with my family and my niece mentioned that her favorite animal was a porcupine, and I laughed for a good long time before explaining to her that porcupines weren't animals. I'd gotten them mixed up with pine cones. I have a graduate degree. My niece was maybe 6 at the time. She schooled me. I once forgot gooses were a thing and said to my friend, "Wow, those ducks are really big." I once was hanging up paper on a cork board and the only thing we could hang them up with was thumbtacks. I thought it was a good idea to stick my hand in the bucket of thumbtacks and grab a handful. Sounds like me. I'll be very gentle grabbing these, won't squeeze at all. Every elevator going down in a busy NYC hotel was already full of people, so I decided to go up. When I got to the final floor I accidentally got out of the elevator instead of just staying put. My office building has elevators that make you pick your floor before getting into them and don't have any floor buttons inside. Now anytime my co-workers and I get into a normal elevator's buttons inside, we stand there after the doors closed and just wait. It takes us a good few seconds of not moving to realize we need to pick a floor. I was in class one day messing around with my stapler. I wonder what'll happen if I staple my finger. Staples finger. Ha, I don't know what I expected. Did the exact same thing at work one day. I wonder how slow I can squeeze a staple out of this. I'll just put my thumb over it so I feel it slowly coming out. Turns out no matter how slow you squeeze they come out pretty dang fast once they snap off. I locked my car keys in the trunk of my car. Hours later when I got my keys out, I proceeded to reenact what happened to my friends, complete with actually locking my keys in the trunk again. That's a special kind of stupid you got there. Told my friend that the 4th of July celebrations must be beautiful at the place we were. We were in Linlithgow, Scotland, and I was talking about the palace and lock. Friend is Scottish. For obvious reasons they do not celebrate the 4th of July. I'm English, have lived in the US for over 20 years now. Don't feel bad because I have yet to have the 4th of July when someone hasn't earnestly asked me whether my family in the UK celebrates the 4th of July. 9/10 times, it's the exact same person, my mother-in-law. Made some soup on the stove in a saucepan and poured it into a bowl, and some of the soup dripped down the side of the boiling saucepan, so I licked it. Put some hot, boiling sauce into a shot glass to let it cool down for tasting. Do something else for 10 seconds. Spot shot glass. Alright, I wanted to check the taste. Proceed not to gently suckle on it, but down the still almost boiling fatty fluid into my mouth like cold vodka. Had a biscuit in hand and the earphone in the other. Put the biscuit in ear and earphone in mouth. At work. Why must I be such a disappointment? Spent a long time wondering why you specified a telephone that goes on the ear, like every phone, before realizing what earphones are. So I guess that's my contribution to this thread. I took the wrong train to get back home and didn't realize it until I had already sat in it for more than half an hour. Twice. It was the same wrong train that leaves a few minutes before the train I wanted to take. I used to commute the exact same route for years. A 1-hour drive took me 5 hours until I got home. When I realized that I was sitting in the wrong train again, I cried. Instead of taking the wrong train, not taking the train, different subway lines stop at the same platform. I was browsing on my phone, looking up while a train arrives to check if it is my train. It is. Continue browsing, looking up while the train leaves, realizing I did not get on. One morning my vision was all blurry, so I started freaking out and called my grandma to take me to the doctor. Then like 20 minutes later realized I just forgot to put my glasses on. I've worn them since first grade and totally forgot for half an hour. I had an opposite experience one time. I woke up and was taking a shower and realized everything was super clear, and holy crap, I can see without glasses. A solid 5 minutes went by before I realized I slept with my contacts in. I drove over a mattress. It was in an alley in a puddle. I thought I would glide right over it. Thing got stuck in my tire well. Had to call a tow truck to lift my car and beat it out with a hammer. Next morning found that it had punctured my front left tire and had to get a new one. Did another dumb thing by thinking I get a whole new wheel, not just tire, so ditched my wheel by the dumpster and then drove to the garage on a flat spare only to be sent home to get my wheel also. It was a bad day or two. And this, kids, is why the wheels of economy turn. Made a cup of coffee, got out a cereal bowl, poured cereal into my coffee, then put the cereal box back in the fridge. I've got the bowl, got the milk out the fridge, cereal out the pantry, made a bowl of cereal, put the cereal in the fridge, milk in the pantry, then went to sit down on the sofa to continue watching TV. Cereal still on the counter in the kitchen. I've done this. When I was cleaning out my shed in the back, I stepped on a rake and the pole smacked me in the face. Literally, like the cartoons. It happened 3 more times before I came up with the bright idea to move the rake. I once threw a stone high in the air directly above me. Absolutely no reason for that. Just because I could, I guess. Instead of walking away, I kept standing there, looking at the stone falling down until it was too late to move. I still managed to put my hands up protecting my head. Hurt a lot anyway. I don't think I'll ever win a Nobel Prize. While helping my girlfriend make dinner one night, we needed some lemon juice and she asked me to squeeze a lemon. Now logic would dictate you cut the lemon in half before you squeeze the juice out of it, but not this brilliant mother. No sir, I just squeezed the crap out of it, rolling and palming it in my hand until the peel finally broke, releasing the lemon juice into a bowl as requested. Needless to say, when she turned and saw what I had done, she was amazed, probably by my impeccable ability to follow orders. She then asked how I ever managed to live alone, and I'm pretty sure that's why I'm not allowed in the kitchen anymore. Well, technically you should roll the lemon around and squeeze it up a bit before you cut it. Makes it easier to juice, so you're not a complete idiot. One time I was thinking about Aqua from Konosuba and I thought natural blue hair isn't real. But what about blue eyes? I have blue eyes. I have blue eyes and I was questioning their existence. It's because you couldn't see your eyes. Fixing a clogged sink by removing the drain pipe and thoroughly rinsing it underneath the tap of the sink I just removed the drain from. My co-worker asked if there is lactose in eggs. I thought to myself they both come from the same animal, so maybe. For 5 seconds, I thought milk came from chickens. The fridge is an animal. Often when I'm closing a door quickly, I will hold the edge of the door rather than the doorknob. You may be wondering, isn't your hand in the way of closing said door? Then the answer is yes. I have slammed my fingers in doors too many times because I refuse to hold the freaking doorknob. I hate when people do this closing my door. The knob is there for a reason. I went my whole life thinking the saying was the ghost is clear instead of the coast is clear. M21 just found out yesterday at work, lol. Well, to be fair, your version is accurate, albeit without real situational meaning. I'm waiting in an airport in a foreign, to me, country right now. This is my second time in the airport and my third booked flight. The first one I was reading a book at the gate and didn't notice everyone leaving. How? I watched that plane moving down the runway and wondered how long until I would be boarding. I rebooked the flight for the next day, but accidentally booked the wrong one and it left while I was sleeping peacefully at my hotel. I'm a bit nervous about this third one, tbh. You've avoided your final destination death twice. So this happened a couple days ago. I got home from school tired as heck, so I decide to take a nap at around 5 o'clock. Well, it turns out to be really deep, and when I wake up my clock says 7:50. This freaks me the frick out because school starts at 7:20 and I quickly get changed and sprint out to my car to drive to school. As I'm driving there is surprisingly little traffic, but I don't think anything of it, and I pull up to the school parking lot. It is completely empty and I'm confused as heck, so I walk over to 2 police officers and they inform me that it is actually 8 PM not am, and I realize that I probably look like the biggest dumbass around. I just yelled at myself all the way home about how freaking dumb I am. I had that happen to me when my work schedule was constantly changing. I woke up around 2 AM, showered, dressed, made lunch, got in my car, started it, turned on the headlights, and realized I didn't have to be at work for another 12 hours. I told my boss I needed a consistent schedule from then on, which I got, and the following week I took a much needed vacation. At age 25 I learned that the proper spelling is wheelbarrow. I'm 37 now. That means that for the first 2/3 of my life I thought it was a combination of the words wheel and barrel. What the frick, this is news to me. First day of university I go out to explore the campus, only to find the same odd piece of litter in the corners of multiple buildings, almost seemingly strategically placed. Even more oddly, it was the same exact piece of cardboard trash I kept seeing. Strange, but probably just leftovers from an event where the university handed out something stored in them. Upon seeing the 5th or so improperly disposed of piece of cardboard, I take it upon myself to be a good citizen and properly recycle the misplaced trash. A simple enough task that even I couldn't screw up. I casually walk to the corner, kneel down, pick up the piece of trash, and I can only imagine what people must have thought after seeing me react to the piece of trash that had somehow outsmarted me, gluing itself onto my skin. I was like a cat with a piece of tape on its paw, flailing wildly, too afraid to scream. The only sound that could be heard was cardboard flipper flaps echoing down the halls. After the 4th or 5th good swing at the air, the cardboard remained permanently affixed to my skin and I had finally begun to realize what was happening. I, a superior intellect, a student of a well-respected university, had been caught by a mousetrap. GG. Had to look it up, but till they make mousetraps out of sticky boxes. Never seen one before. We only have the traditional ones as far as I've ever seen. I was walking home from school with a friend when I was 15. We passed in front of someone who said hey to us. I looked at her, looked at my friend and asked her who she was. My friend gave me a really weird look and said, "Are you serious?" I was like, yeah, after looking a second time. It was my best friend. My best friend who go to the same school and was waiting for the bus. I looked at her 2 times, wondering explicitly who she was, and I did not recognize her. It made me question my sanity for a long time. You should keep an eye on that if it ever happens again. Being unable to recognize familiar faces can be a sign of brain damage, I think. I used to boil eggs in my kettle. One time an egg cracked, so I had to clean it out. To see if the water was eggy afterwards, I decided to smell the steam as it came out. If you do end up with odd or gross smells in your kettle, fill it, then add the juice of half a lemon or a few tablespoons of white vinegar, boil it and rinse. All clean. I have a key fob for my car. It's set up so that if you hit the lock button once, it locks the car. If you hit the same lock button again, it locks it again and honks the horn so you know you've locked it for sure. The thing is, I always want to make super sure that it's locked, but sometimes I come home to my condo super late, and my parking spot is right under someone else's window. I noticed that if the key fob was farther away from the car when I hit the button twice, the honk was not as loud. So out of consideration, I would always wait till I was halfway up the stairs to do the double lock honk. What a great neighbor I am. Anyway, after maybe 2+ years of doing this, one time my girlfriend and I were in my condo and I realized I needed something out of my car. So I go down there, but when I get there I realize I had forgotten my keys. Well, I had my phone, so I called my girlfriend and asked if she would stick her arm out the window with the key fob and unlock my car. She mistakenly hit the lock button twice and my car honked really loudly, even though she was all the way up on the 3rd floor. It was only then I realized the honk was always the same. It only sounded softer when I was farther away, because I was farther away. I have a master's degree. This one is special, because it wasn't just a momentary lapse of thought, like so many in the thread. You reasoned that crap out and stuck to your conclusions for 2 years. Gave my girlfriend the keys to my car and then, 5 minutes later after she had left, proceeded to go into panic mode thinking someone had stolen my car while I was home. Closed a valve and shut off water to my neighbor's apartment. His valve was next to mine, side by side. The thing is, the valves are clearly labeled with apartment numbers, and the entire time I stood there fiddling with the valves it didn't occur to me I'm closing the one with the wrong number. Somehow I even passed a sanity check making sure that the number on the valve equals the number of the apartment I occupy. How? Mr. Brain. How? One time I was at the dentist and I had a lot of work done and it was stressful for me, so I was not thinking too clearly. At least that's what I tell myself. The dentist told me that when I got home I should gargle with some salt water, and I asked, in complete seriousness, "Oh, okay, and where would I get that?" I hope the guy who posted the "is there a word for being hungry but with water on our stupid questions" replies to this. A couple of weeks ago, I heard my neighbor's cat meowing, so I responded with a meow of my own. This went on for about 3-4 exchanges until I opened the door and found it was not a cat, it was just another dude meowing back at me. So many unanswered questions. Somewhere there's a cat that's super confused why you two were carrying on the conversation you were. The many times in rhythm minigames where I mess up once, and while not even getting flustered, just start pressing multiple buttons randomly to compensate the mistake, even though that's not how these games work. Go into teaching because happiness and pride in my work is worth more than money. Turns out actually no, money is pretty important. I'll be done with my 3-year middle high school teaching stint in 3 weeks. The joy of leaving is marred by the crappy experience I've made for myself. It's too sad for me to be happy about it. This actually happened a few days ago. I got lost along the country road and was fumbling through my map to try and find a way back. I saw that there was this back road that would take me directly back to the main road. Great, I thought. This'll get me home in no time. So I eventually find said road, and just as I begin to start traversing it, I come across a sign that said, "Main road is currently not accessible via this track." Obviously any sane person would take this as a sign that this path was blocked and I'm just gonna have to keep going back the way I came. But for some reason, I thought that no, I bet it's fine. I bet this sign is pretty old and hasn't been removed yet. It'll be fine. So I decided to go along the road anyways. It kept going and going into denser and denser forest, and meanwhile the sun is starting to go down. But I haven't hit a dead end yet, so I'm confident that everything will be fine. But then suddenly out of the blue, I come across a big barricade with "road closed" emblazoned upon it. I felt like such an idiot. I had spent the last 40 minutes driving deep into a forest despite the fact I had a clear warning that the road was blocked. There was no reason I should have done this. I just randomly decided that no, I was gonna be right. Newsflash, dumbass. You don't always get to decide what's right. And to cap it off, I was down to a quarter tank of fuel. My huge bus diesel took a big chunk out of my tank, and now not only did I have to find my way out of this pitch black forest, seriously even with high beams you could barely see crap, I also had to find my way back to the main road and then home. All without running out of fuel and becoming stranded on an obscure back road. I can't remember the last time I was ever that stressed out. There was a very serious risk that I could get lost and could have died out there, and no one would be any the wiser. All because of some stupid mistakes on my behalf. The corner of my toast broke off as I was taking it out of the toaster. I went to stick a fork into a toaster that was on to fish it out. I remember a little voice in my head go, "No moron. Stop, Jesus Christ, I hate the way your own brain does something stupid then berates itself for doing something stupid." My building had a power surge, and afterward when I tried to turn my printer on it wouldn't work. Great, I thought, it's busted a fuse or something. So I go to Best Buy and spend the $20 on a new power cord. Come back and change the cord and voila, printer works again. But there was some lingering feeling that something was off, so I switched back to the original cord just to see, and lo and behold, it worked. It was then I realized that I hadn't been pushing the power button before. Sigh. Removed outlet and light switch faceplates to paint a room. Finished painting, but when replacing one of the light switch faceplates I noticed that it's slightly askew. I proceed to grab the light switch to give it a slight twist so the faceplate isn't crooked. I wind up shocking the heck out of myself. This hurts, so I sit down for a moment to catch my breath. I get up only to realize that I didn't straighten the switch. I proceed to straighten the light switch and shock myself again. Is Kansas a state? Kansas is a state, right? Me. 2 days ago. Also a city in Missouri. Moved from a computer-based career to a people-based career after 25 years. Dealing with the personalities, motivations, agendas, social hierarchy and corporate hierarchy. This is some pretty goddamn tough math. Adding to this, some people are naturals when it comes to this kind of thing. When you're exposed to the type of person who handles coordination of this type effortlessly so they can get what they want, it makes you question your competence in certain respects. Police officers of Reddit, what's the stupidest unluckiest criminal you faced? Kid gets arrested for shoplifting and the first thing he says to the cop is, "I didn't steal that freaking car this morning." The cops originally had zero reason to suspect this kid stole and crashed a car, until he said that. It went from misdemeanor to felony in about 2 minutes. The kid distracted the cop from the shoplifting. His strategy worked. Instead of shoplifting on his record, he only has grand theft auto. I was working as a mechanic about 15 years ago. I worked on a Ford Explorer that reeked of weed. Looked in the center console and found a couple of glass pipes and an empty baggie. Fixed the issue it came in for and the kid that owned it came to pick it up. First thing he does is check the center console. He gets out and says I stole all his weed. My boss comes down and asks if I took it. Nope. Tell him they can check my locker, my toolbox, my pockets, and I'll take a drug test. Not good enough for the kid. He calls the cops to report the theft of his weed. A couple officers actually show up and start investigating. Kid shows them his center console where the weed was, and since I was the only one to work on it, I must have taken it. I told them the same I told my boss. They did a cursory search, went back to the kid and cited him for possession of paraphernalia. I got a random 2 days later. I worked there for about 6 more years. Haha, officers, this guy stole my weed. Look, here's my pipes and stuff, but no weed, so obviously he stole it. Jesus Christ, man. A 911 call from some little kids playing on the phone. The father was asleep and they kept trying to wake him up when the 911 operator asked to speak to an adult. He kept yelling, "No, leave me alone now, we have to send someone since we can't verify there's no emergency." Upon arrival, officers ask for it and the mother has a warrant. One of my co-workers was a passenger in a car. The car got pulled over for some reason. The driver had a suspended license. The cop asked my co-worker if he had a license to drive the car. Sure did. Handed the cop his license. Oops, he had a warrant for failure to appear. Not a cop. Heard a great story from one though. Officer pulled a girl going 15 plus over the speed limit on the highway. After she got her ticket and was free to go, the girl tore off, speeding again, and got pulled by another officer a few miles later. Somehow she still didn't learn her lesson. The third officer to pull her that day arrived at her window nearly crying with laughter, saying, "You do know we have radios, right?" That is amazing. I kinda want to know what they were thinking. Working in a prison, I met a complete idiot who was in for arson and attempted murder. This guy was gay and had been living with his new boyfriend. He also had some mental issues and smoked a lot of weed, which would make him paranoid. He became convinced that his boyfriend was having an affair with a guy who lived in the apartment across the hall. And one day he was home alone and thought he could hear them having a conversation in there. He broke in and found that the guy had just left the TV on. But because he was already in, he thought he'd trash the guy's apartment anyway. He made a mess of the place, then turned the gas on, lined up a bunch of gas canisters and lit a small fire in the dining room. The fire alarms went off. The building was evacuated and the guy went outside with everyone else to wait for the firefighters to turn up. He tried to light a cigarette but realized that he had left his lighter back upstairs, so he went back inside to get it. He made it to his floor just as the apartment exploded and one of the gas canisters he'd left in there flew through the door and hit him in the head. Luckily he'd done a crappy job of trying to cause an explosion. Most of the damage was to his own apartment through a shared wall, and the only person he'd managed to injure was himself. His boyfriend was at work and the guy across the hall wasn't even gay. That sounds like a Lifetime movie villain. Jesus. Or like Home Alone. I'm not a cop, but I recently went to a sheriff training center to take the test to become one. One of the other candidates thought it was a good idea to bring nunchucks. He decided to whip them out and show them off to some deputies who were posted outside the center. He was arrested. One cop walked in and said, "If you think it's a good idea to bring illegal weapons to the cop test, then you may as well not even be here today. I learned nunchucks are illegal in car. That day. Guns legal, nunchucks illegal. America is a strange place." Military police here. I was on patrol by myself working a night shift. I get a call on the radio to head to my squadron to pick up a person that would be riding along with me. As I arrive, I noticed that it was the base commander. He wanted to ride along on patrol and get first-hand look at what his enlisted cops had to deal with on a Saturday night in base housing. This sort of thing never happens. You'll have better odds winning the lottery without playing than for the dang base commander to come out and do this sort of thing. So I pulled up to one of the more famous intersections in the housing area for people running the stop sign. We're sitting in the car and making small talk when he spots a car that didn't make a complete stop. He tells me to stop him and find out what their deal is. He approaches the car with me and we begin to talk to the driver. Instantly I smell alcohol emitting from his breath. I begin to say to myself that this guy is the unluckiest man in the military right now to get pulled over by the base commander while driving drunk. After conducting the standardized field sobriety tests on him and seeing how bad he did on them, he begins to break down emotionally. The base commander gets on the phone with this guy's squadron commander to include everyone in his chain of command and have them meet with him in his office in about 30 minutes. I'm putting the cuffs on this guy with another patrol as my backup when the suspect turns to us and tells us that he was set to retire the following month after 24 years of service. Now I don't know the outcome of this guy's situation, but I can definitely say it wasn't good. Not trying to sound mean, but after 24 years of service he should have known better than to frick around right before he retires. Not an officer, but my ex-boss's son got arrested. He didn't have a license because of a prior driving under the influence of drugs conviction and was on his way to college in Colorado. He was still in Kansas and his mother, who had sworn to boss she would not let him drive, got tired and let him drive. So he goes too fast and gets pulled over. No license. Well, that's trouble. The cop asks permission to search the vehicle and they find pot. He was in an area where simple possession was still a misdemeanor, so still not too bad. Then the cop asks him about his pot use and brain-dead kid says, "Oh officer, I don't smoke it, I just have it so I can sell it when I get to school if I need money." Instant felony. Oh no, that sounds just like my cousin. He told the cop, "No, that's not mine. I'm just taking it to my friends that made it attempt to distribute." There's this guy that was speeding and got pulled over. He had no ID and money on him, so he called his wife, told her he got caught for speeding and asked her to get him his items. In the meantime he started to chat with the cops. He got all interested in how their equipment works, and as he seemed to be a nice guy, the cops let him point the laser gun at a car that was speeding into their direction. Long story short, he caught his own wife who was in a rush to bring him his ID and money. And if she forgot her ID and money, then the vicious cycle continues. My dad was a police officer, and one of my favorite stories of his is when he was chasing a guy who ditched his car and took off during a traffic stop. The guy ran about 1 block, jumped over a concrete barrier and dropped. It was a good 20-foot fall down to the freeway and the guy broke his leg. My dad ran over and looked down as the guy crawled to the middle, climbed, rolled over between the concrete barriers blocking the 2 directions. He called down, "That's a good spot, just hang out there," and then radioed for his partner to bring the car around. Overall the guy was fine, but my dad said he lived in the area and either panicked and forgot where he was or knew he was jumping that far and thought he would make it. Blindly jumping into oblivion like that happens more often than one would think. I'm one of 2 civilian employees at a PD. We get our regulars, and this guy is one of them. Recently, he got out of jail and decided he was going to go visit his girlfriend that same day. The only problem is, she had a no contact order out against him. She calls the police and they come to pick him up. He also had some other illegal things on him, so he got taken straight back to jail. He'd only been out for a few hours. But wait, there's more. So, his girlfriend has a no contact order against him, which isn't like a restraining order where you can't go within a certain distance of them. It's literally no contacting them. Well, this smart guy decides he really wants to talk to his girlfriend, so he called her from jail 3 times. She called the police again and they went back to the jail and added more charges. Violation of a protective order X4. He was smart enough to violate a protective order while he was in jail. Group of friends mug a couple of tourists. One of the muggers is for some reason carrying his own passport, which he drops as they run off. Not quite the same, but I'm continually amazed at the number of drug users who expect to get their stash returned. The first time you're caught with a small quantity of cannabis in the UK, you normally get given a caution there and then on the street. You don't get arrested or anything. I've dealt with more than a couple of people who genuinely expected that interaction will end with me handing back their drugs. You seem to have some crappy friends. My family is good friends with the local sheriff. He's told me a story where an officer pulled over a man who was quite obviously under the influence. When he went to the car to talk to the man, he noticed him making a stabbing motion towards his leg. The man had stabbed himself with a screwdriver and tried to say he'd been stabbed at a bar and was heading out of town, in the direction where the next hospital or clinic was about 45 minutes away, and that's why his driving was wonky. If he'd been caught with another DUI, he'd have lost his license. He ended up losing his license anyways, and had a lot of hospital bills to pay. We've had several over the years who have broken into a house or car and then left on foot following a snowstorm. No need for a canine to track them down. Also had a guy who had shoplifted and he knew we were looking for him in the mall. We found him hiding in a store and also found the weed he had tried to hide in the pocket of a jacket near where he was hiding. He denied the weed being his until I opened up the paper it was crumpled up in. It was his bond paperwork from the day before where he had been arrested for shoplifting. I took him back in front of the same judge who had released him so he could be arraigned on his new charges. She was not happy with him and revoked his prior bond. Also had a guy dine and dash, but left his wallet with it on the table. Not a cop, but know several because of a convenience store job I held where cops came frequently for free coffee and soda. It's related. We were really desperate for third shifters to the point where my boss hired a friend of my coworker. Kid was a complete freaking moron. Had a face tattoo, was small and he was told to keep it covered with makeup, which, to his credit, he did. Had to have concepts explained to him multiple times, could barely count change so we had to put him in the back doing stocking. One day, I get called in because he had apparently been arrested. He had apparently offered to sell drugs to another customer in the store, in full view of one of the 4 police officers that were in the store that day. They searched his car and found a mess of pills and pot. According to one of the cops, he claimed that he didn't know that they were in there since it was his mother's car, so they searched her house and found more. Both were arrested. We responded to a bank robbery in progress. Caller surprisingly gives us a good description of both the suspect and the vehicle he got in. Luckily I was only a couple blocks away. I pull on scene and holy crap, matching car is still right out front. I pull and draw down on the suspect. Backup gets there and we get him into custody, no issues. After speaking with the suspect, he was still sitting there because his car wouldn't start and he was sitting there cranking the key trying to get it to start. TLDR, when you rob a bank, leave your car running. Then we could have a funny story about a bank robber getting his car stolen while doing the robbery. Not an officer, but my roommate in college was trying to steal a street sign with a couple other guys. A cop car rolled up with its lights on and they all fled in different directions. Roommate ran a block away through backyards and hid in an open garage. He thought he was free, but a cop on foot found him almost immediately. It had snowed hard earlier that night and he just followed the tracks right to the garage. Guy tried to steal a frozen chicken by putting it under his hat, cooled his head too much and he had a blackout before he could leave the store. I heard a good story once that took place in my hometown, from the halcyon days when light up sneakers were not just for kids. A gentleman with such footwear decided it would be wise to flee on foot from a traffic stop into the pitch dark woods. This happened last week. We get a call to the projects of 620 hours for a domestic. unknown drug apartment. While we are responding, our dispatcher is advising us that the caller, complainant, owns the apartment and that the couple that are staying with her are having the domestic. As we are getting closer, the dispatcher tells us that the couple is breaking everything in the apartment. We get there, everyone is calm, but the apartment has some furniture broken. We run everyone's licenses. The caller, complainant, has an active warrant. She gets arrested and proceeds to resist because she is high. The boyfriend has an order of protection against him from his girlfriend who he is standing next to. He gets arrested. The girlfriend admits to breaking the furniture. She gets arrested. 3 for 3. Hilarious. My uncle is a beat cop. He once had to intervene in a brawl between drunk chaps and a knight. Apparently, 2 drunk louts decided to harass a street performer dressed in a genuine looking plate armor. It quickly evolved into a hilarious fight where the chavs would wail at the impervious knight and injure themselves by punching edges of steel plate. Before they were separated, one of the chavs was badly messed up by being headbutted by a guy in a steel helmet. Wisely, my uncle and his partner decided to let the knight go, since the guy would normally face charges for using a weapon of sorts during a brawl. Your uncle is a very good man. My dad was a cop in the housing projects in Brooklyn. Once there was a report of trespassing and him and his partner had to clear every floor of this building. They get to the roof and find a man shoving a full, unpeeled banana up his butt. My dad loved telling me this story, and it never fails to make me giggle. We never did find out why he was doing it though. Saw a guy pushing his car through an intersection. When my light turned green I naturally went to investigate. Guy had the hood put up and flagged us down and asked for a jump. Ran the plates as a SOP thing and tags are clean. But they go to blue Toyota and this is a gold Suzuki. Run the VIN on the car and it comes as stolen. Guy says his sister let him drive her car. We say no problem, we'll sort it all out if that's the case. Eventually he asks how he can get his stuff out of the trunk. We say he can get it back after we sort it out since it's his sister's car, right? Then he tells us now the car belonged to some white dudes. I have a bunch of stories. My dad is a RCMP officer and was stationed in Alberta for most of his career. On one occasion some guy was sitting in his attic with a gun waiting to kill police officers that were on their way to his residence. The dog handler was one of the guys that arrived on scene and sent his massive German Shepherd into the house. This thing was apparently pitch black and absolutely ferocious. The dog later died on duty and has a statue in BC. Anyways, this dog got into the attic and chased the gunman down, clamped onto his shoulder with his teeth and started tearing him apart. The guy panicked, fumbled with his gun, and in the ensuing chaos, blew his own head off. Dog was called off and my dad arrived in time to see the guy's body being pulled out of the attic. Group of girls hands me a set of keys they took from a sloppy drunk kid who'd been unsuccessfully hitting them in a popular college bar and tried to get into his car and drive off. Said one of them flirted with him on the driver's side while her friend snuck in on the passenger's side. Find the kid passed out behind the wheel of a car parked nearby. Passenger doors wide open but driver's door is closed and locked. Knocked on the window, strobed my flashlight at him for several minutes. Notice he's got $50 bill sticking out of the CD player like his final act of consciousness was hoping for a Snickers. Finally he wakes up, looks at me, thinks I'm telling him to move along, and tries to start the car but fails because there's no keys. Then he can't figure out how to unlock the car from inside. I figure I'll help him out and use the keys to unlock it, only to find out I'm holding Jeep keys, and he's sitting in a Chrysler. He blames the bar for letting him get so crappy. Still had no idea that wasn't his car. Shows me a military, active duty Marine Corps instead of his regular DL in hopes of getting out of trouble. He's 19. Has no friends to call and doesn't know where he's staying. Spends the rest of the trip to holding begging me not to tell his company. Military police here. Thing about getting into trouble in the service is that for some things, like a DUI, you get into trouble both with us and the local law enforcement. There was this real junior guy who was driving back to his barracks room drunk. Somehow he went completely off the road and crashed into a fire hydrant. Fricked up his new car and did a pretty considerable amount of property damage too. Anyways, this guy decides that before we get there, he is going to leave. That's not so dumb. The dumb part's when he walks back to the scene an hour later. claiming he had his car stolen and this was the first he had seen it. Not only did he still have his keys on him, and I guess there was a witness that put him at the scene, but he is also very visibly drunk and injured. He was also underage, which on the civilian side might not count for much, but in the military you can get in a lot of trouble just for that. When we bring him back to the station, he refuses to tell us who gave alcohol to a minor, which I guess means he's loyal, but when he's in that much trouble already he really should have just told us. Anyways, so in the end the guy not only has to pay hefty ticket, gets knocked down in rank, has to pay for his car and the property damage, but I'm pretty sure he got a dishonorable discharge as well. Getting that kind of discharge takes away pretty much all your benefits and makes it ridiculously hard to find a job. Yep, get a dishonorable and it's like having a felony on your record to potential employers. Not a cop, but I have a few that stand out from friends cops I've interacted with. First, our base's mental health psychologist was married to a highway patrolman. One time they were out at the local harbor with their kids, about to enjoy a late lunch. As they are walking up, about 100 yards away, they see a guy stumbling to his car. He proceeds to get in, and then instead of backing out, he goes forward, into a planter and tree. Her husband casually walks over, reaches in, and takes the keys, cuffs the guy, and calls the local police. He learned as a rookie, always carry a set of cuffs even off duty. You never know. Next one. I was performing honor guard duties for Veterans Day, and they had us presenting the colors with a bunch of local officers. Before the event, we are all hanging out in a room, and we ask, what's the funniest, most fricked up story you have? One local cop says, I have this, and no one will top it. He told us how he had to arrest a 19-year-old for having sex with a 12-year-old in the 19-year-old's van. When they arrested the 19-year-old, he stated, but I thought she was 14. In California, the law is if there is a 5-year or less difference, they won't prosecute unless the parent's victim wants to. Unfortunately, that only applies to minors who are 16 and up, so 14. Still very illegal. Not a cop, but it was a story in my town's newspaper. So, this genius gets the bright idea to shoplift some movies and video games from my local Walmart. He puts the items in his shopping cart, picks up a box cutter from the tool aisle and finds a blind spot in the toy section. While trying to remove the box cutter from its package, he slices his hand open. In his ensuing panic, he throws blood all over the place and runs to the restroom. Security is alerted of the opened package and all they have to do is follow the blood trail and they find the culprit crying and licking his wounds in one of the restroom's stalls. On top of the shoplifting charge, he was also ordered to pay for all the items that got blood on them. I think it was around $250. TLDR. Shoplifter sucks at hide and seek. I don't think they can charge him with shoplifting if he didn't technically steal anything yet. He was still in the store with all the items. Would never hold up in court. My sister is a cop. She once turned on her lights to respond to a robbery, and a nearby car took off. Dispatch told her to pursue the car, as others were also responding to the robbery. After a high-speed chase through a residential neighborhood, he takes off on foot and escapes. In the car, he left a trunk full of ecstasy and his pee-off girlfriend, who tells where he lives. Guy is busted on all kinds of charges for the chase and one of the biggest ecstasy busts in the department's history, all because he saw the lights on the squad car and panicked. What is the stupidest thing that has come out of your mouth that you're willing to admit to? A guy got in the elevator pushing a double stroller. In one half of the stroller was the tiniest little newborn baby I've ever seen in my life. The other half was covered with a baby blanket. I wondered if he had newborn twins, or if he had one newborn and one toddler. Unfortunately, what came out of my mouth was, are they both the same kind? I am so glad I scrolled down this far. This one has made me laugh the hardest. In Paris, I said bon noir to a black man who had just made me a crepe. It was nighttime and I was just trying to say goodnight. One morning, after another sleepless night, I had episodes of insomnia when I was in my young 20s. I went to work by train. There were sliding doors between the cars and exits. The door in my car was actually open, so I slid it shut, then walked headfirst into it. Hurt like heck. Took me a while to fully grasp the scope of my stupidity. Other passengers were, understandably, perplexed and looked at me like there was something really wrong and dangerous about me. I said, "It's okay. He's fine." When my dad and brother were in London for 4th of July, I remember saying I bet their 4th of July fireworks are insane. My sister just looked at me like, "You're freaking moron." This one time I thought the 4th was Tuesday, but it was a Wednesday, so when my brother told me that, I told him the 4th is on the 5th. Me when I was 17 getting pulled over. "Officer, so, you weren't wearing your seatbelt, right?" Wink. Me, I was wearing my seatbelt, but I was speeding. "Officer, I'm going to try this one more time. I didn't see you wearing your seatbelt," which is not a moving violation, as opposed to speeding, which is. Understood? Me, number, I was wearing my seatbelt. "Officer, okay, you were speeding. Here's your ticket." My parents, you may be honest, but by God, how the frick did we raise such an idiot? I was going for a job interview once. As we shook hands, the interviewer told me her name. I then introduced myself also using her name. Her name is not my name. It was embarrassing, but I still got the job. And just for clarification, I am also a woman, so it's not like my name is Jim and I introduced myself as Lisa, although that would be funny. While riding in the car with a friend, I kind of have to poop. Me. But I just went. I meant every bit of it, and it took me almost 10 seconds of my friend laughing for me to realize what happened. I woke up from a deep sleep and had to pee really bad, but saw the bathroom door was closed. I knew it was only me and my dad home, so I ran downstairs, found him in the living room and yelled, "Are you in the bathroom?" He slowly shook his head and I ran back upstairs. I woke up later and remembered. Embarrassment followed. I think your head would have exploded had he said yes. A week after getting my first car, I asked my father if the expiration sticker on the license plate meant that the car wouldn't be good anymore after that date. I was 17. Cars, milk cartons, pretty much the same thing. Do you think there's enough steel in the world to build the Eiffel Tower? Context. Was a little drunk with a few friends and someone said there wasn't enough gold in the world to make the base of the tower, so without thinking dropped that on them. This could have been turned around towards that person as sarcasm. Like, as if there isn't that much gold. Of course there's that much gold to make a base for the tower. Crossing the border back into America from Mexico, sweating bullets because all my paperwork and it got stolen, and a border guard says, "Everybody in here American?" I reply, "Si, senor." I once argued vehemently with my friend that the word ambiguous meant very. The ambiguously gay duo made so much more sense after I was set straight. Context. Kindergarten teacher supervising my students serving themselves snack. One student picks up the tongs and asks me what many grapes. Without pausing or thinking, I reply, 4 minutes. This may or may not have happened today. I have adopted 3 kids whose first language wasn't English. I find myself dragged down to their level all the time. "Kid, I haven't got it my snack yet." Me, "You got it at 10 minutes ago. I saw you." After realizing that the clock app icon on the iPhone was actually keeping correct time after an update, the clock tells you what time it is. Holy crap, IT moves. In high school's one of my first parties, I was drinking rather fast, being inexperienced, and being a general dumb teenager. Fast forward a couple hours and I'm making out with a chick on a bed. She's super into it. She whispers in a frickin' sultry butt voice, "We should frick." Now, I was a virgin and I didn't want to get it in and finish in a couple seconds, and I'd heard about how booze makes you last longer. My thought process was that I could put off the sexies, go have a couple more drinks with her, then get back to the room and bang for hours. I didn't realize how drunk I was, because all that came out of my mouth while I looked this frisky girl in the eyes was, "Wait, I need to be more drunk for that." I didn't get laid for over a year and a half after that. LOL. My jaw dropped reading that. That poor girl. I am half Hispanic, half white, but could pass for black. I was adopted by a German-Irish mother and a Russian Jewish father. Read. Extremely white people. One day as a teenager I absent-mindedly asked my mother, "Did you and dad ever think about not telling me I was adopted?" The look of sheer disappointment followed by obnoxious laughter told me everything I needed to know. Or, he really is that stupid. On a road trip in Central California, I pointed at a herd of cows and yelled, "Horses." My boyfriend was quiet for a minute, and then, "Those are definitely cows." A moment I'm mortified to remember, talking to an older Asian co-worker when I was 18 about shoes, and she mentioned that her husband was hard to shop for because he wore a large size. I said, surprised, "Wow, that's a pretty big size." To which she replied, "Well, he's 6'3". And I said, "That's pretty tall for an Asian guy." To which she, of course, replied, "Well, he's black." Glares silently while I mumble and bumble to apologize. Whoa, he is pretty black for an Asian guy. Not me, but a guy friend. We were paying at Chipotle. Employee, "You two together?" Friend, laughs awkwardly, "No, we're just friends." Me, "He meant the order. Jesus. He wants something more. May as well go for it." As a freshman in high school, I was selected to give a speech to the local Rotary Club on my vision of the future. Really big event to a 14-year-old. There were 100 or so people and a fancy dinner. Anyway, I got nervous during my speech, got distracted looking at my note cards, and blurted out, "We will live in a future where people are judged on the color of their skin and not the content of their character." I played high school hockey, and after beating one of our rivals, I was so full of adrenaline that while going into our locker room, which was right next to the other teams, I yelled, "We just sucked your dongs." I was never good at trash talking. I'm sure your team let you off easy. I was on hold with my doctor's office, and during the hold, it was all these advertisements for their new birthing suites, prenatal center, and bipolar Zortovas. I was on hold for about 3 minutes listening to this on repeat, and then all of a sudden the receptionist picks up with name and date of birth. "Please, my name is Tubanonster, last name and I'm not pregnant. Did I call the wrong number? This is name of place. That's where I meant to call. I need to set up an appointment." "Okay, Tubanonster, can I get your date of birth?" I'm not expecting." I can tell by the way she spoke the next questions that she didn't think English was my native language. And in retrospect, I don't blame her. "Your birthday. The day you were born." "Oh crap. I'm sorry. 12/XX/87. In my defense, I had mono and I was really freaking tired. I think that's called priming. After seeing images related to pregnancy, your mind was primed to think about questions you were asked in that context. Don't blame yourself, blame psychology. At the store I work at, we require a government-issued photo ID for returns. This is in a college town, so a lot of customers are international students and use passports. A customer came in with a return and used his passport from Korea. I asked him if it was north or south, and it took me at least 20 seconds to realize why he was staring at me like I was an absolute idiot. Clearly, best. Recently buying something and was asked if I had a student card for discount. I passed it over and they immediately lowered the price. Then I blurted out that card's actually out of date and had the price raised. I have no idea why I said it. My wife said, "I have something exciting to share with you." I felt her belly. "Yes, they're calling for more snow tonight." Wait, you thought I was pregnant? And here's where I really mess up. It would have explained a lot. It seemed funny at the time, but I guess that's just me. Source: posting this from the couch. LOL, fundamental mistake. I was in Lush soap store getting Christmas presents for my two sisters. Shop attendant: "So, who are the gifts for?" Me: "My sisters." Shop attendant: "Okay, what size?" Me: Thinks for a moment. "They're about 5FT2 and 5FT4. Shop attendant: "I meant the presents." To be fair, Lush is pretty strange if you haven't been to the store much. I had a craving for fries, so I went through the McDonald's drive-thru. The fries weren't ready, so they had me park in the waiting lot until fresh fries fried. After a bit, the girl comes out with a bag and asked me what kind of fries I had ordered. I looked at her dumbfounded and said French, like this was either a trick question or MCD's now served up curly fries and I didn't know about it. She was asking size. "Spanish fries please." What if yelling at a vagina was pleasurable? We were talking about sound and vibrations and that gem popped into my head. That's such a Gavin-free thing to say. My friend punched me in the chest at a party and I screamed ow. That was my scrotum, I meant sternum. I am a female and obviously don't have a scrotum. When I was at my first day at junior school, age 12, I was called to the front of an assembly in front of the entire school to talk about my first day and what it had been like. I was really into what we in the UK call American football, and me and a few new friends had been learning how to play, the terminology and having a great time with it. I had realized I was pretty good at kicking the ball a long distance, so I elected to tell the principal of the school how good I was at punting. Except I was nervous and overcompensating, so I didn't get the words right. What I actually said was, I am really good at cunting it. My friends and I were at the park when we saw this small little mini cars that children could drive around. They were pretty cool. Me, hey, those cars look really cute. Imagine if they could rent out adult versions for us. Friend, yes they do. They call it a car. To be fair, that doesn't sound all that stupid. Although renting a car wouldn't be the same as a small mini toy car is. Try a go-kart. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. For years, I'm talking up to 2 years ago, I'm 26. I thought that was Jesus' full name, and that's why people yell angrily say it. It wasn't until my wife corrected me and just laughed. God really wanted a daughter. In the middle of an exam, the teacher caught me comparing answers with my friend. You too. Stop that right now, said the teacher, and what came out of my mouth was, wait just a second, we're almost done. I was eating some delicious corn chips and some delicious potatoes. I wonder if anybody has ever tried to make chips out of potatoes. My girlfriend smacked her head into the table so hard it bruised a little. My housemate couldn't remember the name for avocados, so proceeded to refer to it as pre-guac. It's kind of stuck now. Me and my dad convinced my little cousin to call bread raw toast. This cute girl had a crush on me. We were sharing a pack of Twinkies. She says, I probably look so fat stuffing this Twinkie in my mouth. I intended to reassure her that she has no reason to think she is fat. So I said, look, you aren't as fat as you think you are. She cried. I tried to explain it. It didn't work. She never spoke to me again. Complete sober and clean of any substances or drugs. At the drive-thru of a Krispy Kreme. Employee, hello, may I take your order? Me, in the most distressed, confused voice possible, where are you? My friends that were in the car still make fun of me for it. I'm a teacher. During state testing we go lax on the kids and sometimes watch movies in the afternoon. We were watching Happy Feet, which I'd never seen before. The scene where the penguin wakes up in the zoo and walks into the glass. Oh my god, is this a true story? That poor penguin. The teacher sitting next to me fell out of her chair laughing. Hey mom, in order to save trees, why don't we just make copies of paper? I used to speak before I thought in my youth. Still do, tbh. My so still makes fun of me for this. When we were quite early into our relationship, I was half awake one morning and said to him, so I have this great business idea. It's like McDonald's, but with puppies. You go in and you order which puppy you'd like to play with for a certain amount of time, and then you get it. I'd call it fast puppies. Like fast food, but not food. Fast puppies. Whenever I call him out for saying something stupid, he just looks at me and says fast puppies. Total shutdown. This sounds like a great idea. In fact, I think Japan has this already. When I was in high school, I had a crush on a girl. She was talking to her friends about the stupidity of psychic phone lines. I just don't know how bored you'd have to be to call one of those. It's like there are so many other things you could spend money on. I wanted to sound cool, so I butted in. That's why they have party lines. It did not come off sounding cool or smart. She just stared at me with a what look on her face. It's one of those things that made all the sense in the world in my head and just sounded idiotic when it came out. I cringed so hard picturing this. One time a waiter asked me what I wanted to order and I panicked and just yelled no. Whole family thinks I'm autistic because of it. One time the waiter asked if I wanted 2 checks or 1, and in front of my girlfriend I went check. They both just stared at me. I had to go pee in this Porta John, and when I walked in I thought, freaking Christ, why does it reek of pee? Not just it reeks of pee, but why? Why does the place I'm about to pee smell like pee? Back when I was in 8th grade, maybe 7th, someone told me to shut the heck up and the best thing I could think of was up. How? With a giant ice cube. My friend who was with me and the guys who told me to do that were both like WTF. Needless to say I was thoroughly embarrassed lol. What the frick though? Really? I'd never forget that. Yay. He's not black. First words out of my mouth when my first child was born. Should also mention that the delivering obstetrician was black as was one of the nurses. I seem to handle stressful situations by saying stupid crap. I once got held up and told the robber good thing you didn't look in my shoe after he made me hand over my backpack and was starting to leave. He then stole my freaking shoes. I had nothing in my shoes. There are actually people with black skin. They're not some kind of alien or have some sort of disease. I was 8 and we have very few black people in my country. Not all that relevant, but there are more or less no black people where I grew up. We had a man come to do a presentation about something or other at our primary school. He was black. The teachers told us all not to be surprised or shocked at his black skin and not to be rude about it. For some reason I was annoyed when I realized we had been misinformed and his skin was actually brown. What was a moment you said to yourself, dang, I actually am stupid? Me, hey, have you seen my glasses? Did you check the fridge? And there they are just like the 100 other times I can't find my glasses. Why do I put them in the fridge? Because you want to look cool. I'm from the south and dated a girl when I was younger. First time meeting her mom, in a heavy New York accent. She asked me, "You like dogs?" I said, "No thanks. I'm not hungry." It took me way too long to realize she was talking about the 2 giant pets they had, which were literally in between us, and not freaking hot dogs. My dad is a prankster. When I was about 18 he tried to convince me that Kenny Rogers owned Kroger, and it was really convincing. It didn't help that we called it Kroger's with an S and not Kroger, which is correct. He kept saying. He even named it after himself. Kenny Rogers, K. Rogers. Kroger's. It made sense. But knowing my dad, my Bulls detector was going off, so I announced that I'll find out once and for all and call the local Kroger and ask. I called, asked for a manager. He gets on the phone and I ask if Kenny Rogers owns Kroger's and relay the argument my dad gave. The dude laughs hard for a solid 2 minutes, thanks me for the best prank call he's had and hung up on me. 25 years later my dad still asks if I found out if Kenny Rogers owned Kroger yet. When someone told me they had the same name as me, I said, "Really? What's your name?" Needless to say, I felt like dying. This one time I was asked to ref a football match, was gonna flip a coin to decide which team would start. I asked for a rep from each team, asked the first guy whether he was picking heads or tails. He picked heads. I asked the other guy what he was going to pick. I asked the other guy what he was going to pick. Rim, please. Found a lost smartphone when walking somewhere. It was the exact same model as my own phone. Dropped it off at the nearest police station so they could contact the owner. Found out later that I had dropped off my own phone instead of the one I found. Given the level of stupid in some of these other stories, I was expecting you to say that you had found your own phone you didn't know was lost. I was friends with some twins. I said happy birthday to one of them. The other asked what about me? My dumbass. Oh crap, is it your birthday too? Yes. Dang, that's crazy, you'll even have the same birth. Oh dang. I am actually stupid. I said out loud, wouldn't it be crazy if Halloween fell on a Friday the 13th? It would be crazy because that's not how dates work. To be fair, it would be crazy. One particularly hazy morning I went to the cafe, paid for a cup of coffee, then promptly turned around and walked about a half mile down the block before realizing I never got my coffee. That sucks. Went in to buy gas once, decided to get a fountain drink, gave the clerk a $20 bill, got in my car and promptly drove away. Was only when I looked at my fuel gauge like 10 minutes later I realized what I did. Most expensive Dr. Pepper ever. In the army I was learning how Humvees worked. You have to lock the doors from the inside by slamming down a bar. It's called combat locking the door. Then you put a padlock on the driver door to secure the Humvee. My squad leader taught me a trick to reach through the window and slam down the bar instead of having to crawl through and reach the bar for each door. Then you just push the window up and you are done. I thought I was high speed when I learned this, so the next day when I was showing off my new trick, I locked all 4 Humvee doors faster than anyone. What I forgot was that you are not supposed to combat lock the driver door. This meant the Humvee was completely combat locked and could only be unlocked from the inside. I had to disassemble an armored Humvee door, which took hours and was roasted the entire time by everyone around. When you get out to grab coffee at the 7-Eleven and accidentally combat lock your Humvee, ugh, the worst. I was out clothes shopping when I spotted someone I recognized. We made eye contact and smiled at each other. It was just then I realized I was walking towards a full-length mirror. I used to work at a lovely deli around 2-3 years ago. Some of the beverages we offered was fresh, hot coffee. A gentleman walked in and asked for a coffee with lots of cream. Not a problem, says I. I pull out the cream, take the lid off, and my boss reminds me to shake it first. Not a problem, I think again, and shake the open, lidless carton of light cream, sending cream all over the floor, counter, fridge, etc. Everyone in the deli just stopped and stared at me for a few of the longest seconds of my life. Made me rethink so much of my life. I was talking on the phone with my mom. After a while I got frustrated because I couldn't find my phone anywhere. I told my mom about it and she replied, "Wait a second. I'll hang up and then call it so you can find it." I figured out how dumb I was as I was staring the ringing phone in my hand. We had a good laugh about it, but apple really doesn't fall far from the tree. Very similar story, but it was my mom yelling me places to look for the phone while I was on the phone to her. During a dental appointment, my dentist asked me to bite down on this little strip of like sandpaper. Not sure what it's called exactly, but she says, "Okay, now tap, tap, tap," but while she said it, she motioned with her hands like this. What she meant was tap my teeth down on the sandpaper a few times. I took it as "Okay, I'll tap my fingers together," and just mimicked her gesture. She was trying so hard not to laugh at me when I realized what I had done. The paper has a bit of color on it, and when you bite down it leaves a temporary mark where your teeth connect. It is used to test your bite and check that things line up properly. I was preparing to run a 10K race. It was cool, so I was wearing my running suit. Right before I go to the starting line, I'm about to take off the pants and I realize I'm not wearing any shorts underneath. Just Under Armour. I forgot to put them on. Somehow I managed to set a PR. It's become a running joke, no pun intended, that I make sure I'm wearing shorts. I once put on a hoodie cause I was too lazy to put on a bra and shirt, and it was a cool day. Later the day warmed up and I took the hoodie off. I'm truly ashamed of how long it took before the "man, it's breezy" thought percolate. I was just out in Green Bay with the titties flapping for a good 5 minutes. In my kitchen I have one cabinet for bowls and plates and another one for cups. This hasn't changed since moving into the house 4 years ago. About 75% of the time, I open the wrong cabinets to get what I need. Even when I try really hard to focus on opening the right cabinet, I still regularly get it wrong. That was the final straw that validated my stupidity. You should put half the plates and cups in one cabinet, and the other half in the other cabinet. Then you're always right. My divorce finalized in early 2017. In late 2017, I got back together with my ex-wife. Sitting across from my ex-wife in a Mexican restaurant in late 2019 after our 1000th argument, I very calmly, but firmly, said, "We're the stupidest people on the freaking planet." She agreed. A couple days later she moved out. This conversation with my boss: "I will be in late tomorrow. I have a doctor's appointment. Is everything okay?" "Yes." "Why do you ask?" Probably made you seem super suspicious. I was 10, at a basketball tournament out of the city. I told my mother I was going to a friend's room at the hotel we were staying at. He was 3 floors below the room we were staying in. I got in the elevator and pressed floor 6. The doors closed and nothing happened. I pressed floor 6 again. Instant panic shot through my body. Pure sweat dripping down my forehead. I was stuck in an elevator. Instantly, I had to crap. I sat on the floor for 10 minutes, accepting that this is where I was going to die. Not once did it occur to me to press the emergency button. As I sat there and went through how I would die, I figured I might as well press the door open button and see if I could reset the elevator or some magnificent plan. I pressed door open and the elevator doors opened, and there I was, on the 6th floor. I immediately remembered that I was staying on the 6th floor and pressed the same button that was the floor I was staying on. That's why I didn't move. I needed to go to the 3rd floor. Look at the bright side, it would have been worse if you had pressed the emergency button. I put my phone in the freezer to charge. I remember having the thought that it would actually work. Several hours later, I couldn't find my phone. When someone called me, my brain refused to put together that the reason why my fridge was playing music was that my phone was in it. I just thought it was a feature I had missed. OMG, this one have so many levels. Forgot to check the oven before preheating. Set a forgotten pizza box on fire. Husband will never let me live it down. It was several years ago. Here's one. My wife threw a graduation party for me. She bought corn on the cob to make. I put it in the oven in the plastic grocery bags to store it for later. Hours go by, and I preheat the oven for something and go outside. I made plastic dipped corn on the cob for our guests. I was in my late 30s before I realized you can raise the lever on the toaster to lift up the toast and easily grip it, instead of playing operation with your fingers in the toaster slots. Say what now? Age, 64. My BF was weighing our suitcases the night before a flight. He did the classic, step on the scale and then step on the scale with the suitcase and do the math technique. One of the bags was a couple of kg over the limit, so I reassured him that by morning he will have lost a bit of weight which might help get back under the limit. Didn't think that one through. I was working with my deaf co-worker and the store we worked at was having a sale on AirPod Pros. I forgot he wouldn't be able to use them and was miming to him that he should buy some. He just pointed to his ears and shook his head. Then to make it worse, I kept trying to sign to him that I was sorry and kept signing thank you instead. He at least got a good laugh out of it. I'm deaf. My boyfriend asked me what wireless earbuds I would recommend. I just stared at him and pointed to my hearing aid. I spent a good 45 seconds trying to open a can of beans with a can opener and couldn't for the life of me figure out what I was doing wrong. I remember thinking it had been a while since I'd opened a can, but really? Then I took a good, hard look at what I was doing and realized I was trying to open a can with a potato peeler. I had swapped a different engine into my car. Got around to the point where I was ready to do startup. Go to fire it up and nothing. Not getting any fuel pressure. Fuel pump was priming. Wasn't a leak anywhere. Tear the fuel cell apart. Pull the pump out. Rig up a bucket of fuel, test the pump. Seems to be working fine. Put the fuel cell back together. Must be a plugged filter. Pull the filter, can blow through it fine, shouldn't be stopping the fuel. Finally dawned on me after an hour of fricking around. I've been pulling apart the whole fuel system and there isn't ethanol on everything. Freaking fuel cell is empty. Put some fuel in the car and you wouldn't believe it, but it made fuel pressure. I'm a freaking idiot. Based on everything you said, I can assure you that you aren't an idiot. You sound like a damned wizard. I work in IT. I'm so convinced I can fix any problem on my computer. I almost never reboot the dang thing as a step one, despite the fact that that's what I always tell people to try first. Not me, but my sister had this realization when I challenged her confident proclamation that she wanted to sit at the back of the roller coaster to get a longer ride. She will get a faster ride down the hills though. Typically 3/4 to the back is the best place to sit if you want the best pops of airtime. I was at a young age, 8ish, when I thought the Star-Spangled Banner said Jose, do you see? That was a moment. Reading is fundamental, kids. I thought the line in this land is my land was from California to the New York Highlands rather than New York Island. I had been going to this campsite a few times in this really isolated Bureau of Land Management area by a lake. It was a great campsite, but you had to hike 1.5 miles with your tent and bags and everything through rocks and crevices and crap. It was a little bit difficult. So I get the idea to buy a small inflatable boat at Dong's Sporting Goods. Put all my crap on there and paddle across this huge lake. It was almost 2 miles across. so I would land right by the campsite. Turns out the boat was not that sturdy. All my crap fit in there, but the tools were all plasticine and the sides were not very sturdy. Also, I forgot to pack a life jacket. That's the first time I thought, dang, I actually am stupid. Also, it was so windy on that fateful September day. Just gusts of wind non-stop. I start rowing across the lake and right away my oar just breaks right in half. Frickin' plastic made in China thing just snapped. I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Only down to one oar? So I start rowing some more, but the boat was really made for 2 oars and it was going wonky with just one. I tried to row harder on one side and the frickin' oar just slipped right out of my hand into the water. Here's where I make the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't even think about it. I just jumped into the water to grab the oar. As soon as I leapt off the boat, the wind just took that frickin' boat flying across the water. I was like, no no no. And I swam after it, but it was getting swept away a lot faster than I could swim. And then suddenly it was gone. I'm out in the middle of this abandoned lake bobbing up and down in the waves with no life jacket. No nothing. I was like, well, today is the day I die. I couldn't do anything. I started screaming for help, but there were no people anywhere. No cars. Nothing. I tried to bob up and down in the water, but it was taking all my energy just to stay afloat and I wasn't getting anywhere. I said, well, old sport, today is the day you die. I don't know why this experience turned me into F. Scott Fitzgerald, but on this day it did. I was thinking, might as well give up and drown. But then I realized I didn't want to die. I wanted to see my kids and I was in a fight with one of my brothers and I forgot to make up. My life was getting better and I was traveling and crap. Too many reasons to live. I told myself, be the boat, be the boat. The boat made it to shore. You can too. I started swimming as hard as I could and it was the toughest thing I have ever done in my life. My arms cramped, my legs cramped, my stomach cramped. When I finally hit the shore and could stand up, I just looked up at the stars and started crying. Altogether, I had been in the water without any flotation more than 2.5 hours. Quite a featuring, but no matter what, that day I realized, dang, I actually am stupid. Was a bit distracted while unloading my shopping. Accidentally put my novel in the freezer and ice cream on the shelf. Didn't notice until the next day. By that time the ice cream was spoiled and the book was mildly iced over. This made me laugh on an empathetic level. Not me, but I work in a call center and just spoke to a woman a minute ago. I told her to have her husband call us before we close at midnight EST, in about 4 hours. She asked me, is that 4 hours my time? Since being concussed, I won't say I wasn't stupid before the concussion, but I know for sure I'm stupider now and it's a strange sense of loss. Open drawer to look for something. Don't see what I need. Start a close drawer. Spot thing I wanted in the first place. Reach hand back in while still closing drawer with other hand. Shut hand and drawer. Sometimes once you commit to emotion. Deployed. Heard word of an unidentified drone flying relatively close to our area. So I'm just sitting there staring up at the night sky. I really have never seen a drone during the nighttime, so I didn't really know what altitude to expect them to be flying at, or if they had lights on. So I was pretty clueless. This dim light catches my eyes as I'm scanning the sky and I focus in on it. The light seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I ended up calling it up over the radio for the guys I was working with to come outside and take a look. They came outside, looked at the light in the sky I was pointing at, looked back at me, and then called me a dumbass. It was clouds slowly drifting in front of the moon. So I think that one was a mix of my own stupidity and tiredness. I traveled to Paris by myself when I was 18. I stupidly assumed that my Canadian high school French would be sufficient to converse in French in France. I very quickly discovered that was not the case. This, however, was not the moment of stupid. The moment of stupid was when I was lost somewhere in Paris trying to find my hotel. I decided I needed to ask someone for help, but knew I needed to find someone who spoke English. So I walk up to a clerk and intend to ask, do you speak English and French? But my brain shorts and I get the stupid. So instead I ask this clearly French man in Paris, France, parlez-vous français? Do you speak French? He gave me the most dumbfounded and exasperated "oui" I've ever heard, before I corrected myself. You should have replied, good because I don't, and Francais of course. I was shocked to learn that hearts and diamonds are always red cards and spade and clubs are always black in a deck of cards. I was told last night and felt so dumb. I've played poker. Ah, so that's their names in English. It would have been the mid to late 90s, hanging out at a friend's, listening to records and smoking pot. Friend put on his new Green Day Dookie album. I definitely know the lyrics to the song Basket Case and have no issue with singing them with gusto. Me. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mom plays tricks to own me. My friend. Did you just say mom? Me. Yeah. Reading my shampoo bottle and it said 30 uses. I thought of 1. Shampoo and 2. Emergency body wash before I thought of 3. I am an idiot. After a year or so of living in this condo and thinking that it sucked, I didn't have a fan or light over my oven. I pressed the wrong button on the microwave and voila, light went on. I'm ashamed to admit how long it took me to realize I had a microwave oven range unit. I once talked to my GF about the impressive records of Cristiano Ronaldo in football. Literally in her next sentence she asked, how old is Ronaldo? To which I stupidly replied, who's Ronaldo? I worked seasonally for a jewelry store in college. They had a trunk show scheduled for Halloween Day and I was told to dress up. So I dressed up in a shark costume only to realize upon arrival that they meant dress up. Fancy. A customer dropping mad cash on an anniversary ring for his wife laughed and asked if I'd drawn a short straw. Nope. Just turns out I'm a freaking idiot. You earned the belly laugh. Absolutely freaking out to a friend that I couldn't find my phone anywhere while talking to them on my phone. Yes, I was completely sober. Not me, but my sister. One time, she went to go put a glass of water in the microwave to help keep her food moist, but the glass was too tall. Instead of getting a smaller glass out of the cabinet, she poured half the water out into the sink. The glass still wouldn't fit in the microwave, and she realized after what she had done. This reminds me of a quote from a scientist documentary where they had to work at high altitudes with less oxygen in the air. He called someone at the base and said, I've cut the line 3 times and it's still not long enough. One time I went to the pet shop to buy a hamster. I bought a huge cage for him, some food, but when I went home, I realized that I forgot to buy hamster. I was peeing in a urinal. Then I think I accidentally walked into the girls' bathroom. I couldn't leave because I was peeing, so I was just terrified some girl was going to walk in and see me. I finished peeing, went to the sinks, and realized how stupid I was. I found a spoon in my freezer and while thinking, why is this spoon in the freezer? I licked it. My tongue got stuck and I pulled the spoon fast off my tongue. I then bled for a while after as I had torn my tongue in several spots. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.